The sky was covered with overcast clouds, gray and hazy, and the long drizzle gave people the illusion that it was about to clear up just now, but it suddenly fell heavily, and the bean-sized raindrops hit the person's body, which was a little painful. The mud started to be full of potholes, and the feet would sink in from time to time when they stepped on it, and when they were lifted up again, they would bring mud full of feet. Moo moo. Octopus Zauba held a huge roast suckling pig and walked along the bank while shouting. The smell of roasted suckling pig had long been cooled down by the heavy rain. Moo moo. The manatee who appeared at the mealtime on time, seemed to be related to this and did not show up. Strange. Why haven't you come out yet? Zauba looked around, and suddenly saw 3 murlocs leaning against the rocks at the shore, who seemed to have passed out, tightly tied together by ropes, and walked towards there. Ran. What's the matter with you? Suddenly, an extremely hard-to-feel thin blade protruded from the rain, rushing towards it in a sudden white light. Xiao Ba quickly reacted, picked up the roast suckling pig in his hand to resist in front of him, stepped on the ground with both feet, and quickly backed away. The light of the knife in the air blocked it, and then picked it up, and the roast suckling pig was split into 2 pieces. Dare to attack my little 8, you hateful human being. Xiao Ba retreated out of Zhongwang's attack range, patted his chest in fright, and then fled to the distant jungle. Kabaji's figure appeared in the rain, watching the other party run away with heavy eyes. Although the murlocs were used as bait to successfully lure the octopus over, it was a pity that the continuous heavy rain hindered his surefire sneak attack. Some effects. According to the plan, the octopus will definitely lose its combat effectiveness after this sword strike, but there is still a gap between reality and expectations. Forget it. There's no need to delay any longer. The time agreed with Captain Buggy is coming up. Hurry up to Aaron Square. Kabaji dragged the 3 murlocs and prepared to leave. There was a whistling wind behind him, and a terrible airflow came from him. There were 3. Paper painting. Kabaji's body quickly dodged along the airflow, and 3 heavy objects from top to bottom rushed towards him one after another. Without giving him a chance to breathe, a smashing blow sent his body flying more than 10 meters away. Kabaji quickly adjusted his body in midair and finally stood on the ground with both feet steadily, and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. It's really an unpleasant rain. The resistance of this heavy rain and the ground that is very easy to sink have greatly interfered with his body skills and movements, and even the strengthening and weakening of the sense of presence in the kendo have been greatly affected. Little Beliu danced the 3 thick trees together with great power with his arms. Zauba, I like this rain very much. For murlocs, whether it's rain or sunshine, it's a happy event. It's really nonsense, but octopus. You are much stronger than this ordinary murloc. Because Zauba, I am a cadre under Aaron, so of course I will be better. Officer. Kabaji's eyes flickered. So, your value is much higher than those of the murlocs, so it's just right to use you as a bargaining chip. His feet tapped the ground lightly, and his pace towards Zauba became faster and faster. His right hand was tightly grasped on the handle of the knife. The snowflakes fell, and the white light suddenly flashed like thunder at night. At the same time, Buggy dragged a bundle of murlocs who had lost their combat effectiveness and walked on the road. After teaching a few guys who tried to resist, the murlocs behind them all calmed down and were dragged along the muddy ground by ropes. 5. A total of 5 single murlocs were caught. This is the loot he got after searching through several nearby villages. The amount is not very large, but if Kabaji catches a few more murlocs, the combined amount will be enough to exchange for mochi. Well, as for repairing the horse, it's enough to just guard the boat there honestly, but it will be troublesome if the boat is scuttled by those murlocs. The appointed time is almost here. Buggy covered his forehead with one hand, and looked up at the high-rise that was vaguely reserved in the middle of the sky in the distance, and then, all he had to do was move forward there. Proceeding along the way, bypassing the village head of Koko Yaxi village, the heavy rain still couldn't stop the noise in the village. A group of villagers with shovels and forks were stationed in the village under the command of a Jian, like a general on the battlefield, full of arrogance roaring and responding. Buggy looked back indifferently at the few villagers who were not afraid of death, and continued to move forward. After walking for about 10 minutes, you can see that the tall buildings in Aaron Square, which were covered by rain curtains before, are now very clear. The red gate that symbolizes isolation and dominance comes into view, and it looks a bit majestic, but in the end it is just a counterfeit product. Even if it can imitate the appearance of the Chambord playground, it cannot describe the charm. Murlocs who only know about violence, destruction and killing, how else can they be expected to have unique ideas? Hasn't Kabaji come yet? Baki looked around, stepped forward, dragged a bundle of murlocs behind him, and walked towards the gate of the square. He stretched out his right hand and casually pushed open the rather heavy door. Aaron, with his jagged nose, was sitting in his exclusive seat, and Black Belt and Jew stood beside him, like two guardians in martial arts, looking a little interesting. The crowd of fish at the bottom kept playing and playing in the water, full of wanton laughter. Mochi was erected on a wooden pillar made of a cross and placed in the pool. The two ends of the cross were tied to the stone slabs on both sides with strong ropes. His body below the chest was soaked in the water and was surrounded by fish. The man was splashed with water and looked haggard and weak. Seawater is an insurmountable thing for ability users. With the sound of the door opening, all the murlocs in the square focused on Buggy. Aaron. Buggy paced into the gate, threw the murlocs tied up behind him on the ground in front of him like trash, and said unhurriedly, "This is the 500 million Baileys you want." Aaron squeezed his right hand on the armrest of the chair, and it was crushed with a crack, looking at Buggy out of the corner of his eye. "You despicable human being, what good things have you done to my lovely compatriots?" "Oh, that's right. It doesn't seem to be worth the price. I remember that one murloc is about 100 million Baileys, and 5 murlocs are 500 million. It's not enough." Buggy stretched out 5 fingers with one hand, and looked at Aaron with a half smile, but the other hand holding the dagger had already been separated, hovering in front of the neck of the bundle of murlocs. Originally, he planned to use the murlocs as a bargaining chip, but seeing that there were 60 or 70 murlocs in Aaron Square, he didn't think these murlocs could make this proud and extremely racist. He was able to lower his face and exchange hostages with himself on an equal footing. He could feel that Aaron's contempt and hatred for human beings from his bones was far higher than his love for his companions. After standing here for a while, the feeling in his heart became stronger and stronger. My guess before coming to me is completely useless. However, it seems that the other party's innate sense of racial superiority can be exploited. Aaron's forehead is densely covered with veins. The enslavement and trafficking of murlocs has always been the scar that a murloc like him who despises and hates humans is the last scar he wants to mention. The hotter fireball gradually devoured his sanity. The red-nosed bastard who doesn't know what to do. Bastard, you actually made Aaron so angry. Jew, who folded his arms to the side, propped his arms on his sides, and turned his head to the sky. Gulu Gulu took a few breaths of rainwater, then turned his head and pointed his mouth at Buggy. Taste my water iron cannon. He shoots powerful, bullet-like drops of water from his mouth, like a non-stop Gatling frantically shooting at Buggy. Buggy's body was beaten into the shape of a hornet's nest, and the tiny flesh-colored grains of sand were carried several meters behind his body by the impact, catching crystal raindrops in the air, and then flew back to the holes on his body, throwing the body makes up for a complete appearance. Chirp shot out all the drops of water in his mouth, and looked at the unharmed Buggy in surprise. "You human being. It's useless, stupid murlocs like you can't do me any harm." Buggy's eyes turned, and he took in all the surroundings in front of him, but a casual smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, mocking intentionally or unintentionally. "It's just that such a low-handed method is still trying to become a ruler. It really makes people laugh." Another devil fruit capable user. Aaron finally stood up from the chair, with a very aggressive lavender complexion and a tall body, giving him a condescending sense of oppression. Aaron. The black belt tried to stop Aaron, but the latter stretched out his hand to stop him, signaling to back down. However, devil fruit users are really fragile. Just soaking their bodies in water makes them look like they are dying. From the corner of Aaron's eyes, he glanced at the exhausted Moki, and turned his cruel eyes to Buggy, a landlubber who can't even swim, combined with his identity as an inferior race, dares to make irresponsible remarks in front of me. "Do you know the advantages of murlocs over humans?" Aaron said coldly. "In terms of race, it seems that they are stronger than humans in terms of strength. However, I don't seem to have heard of any murlocs who are so powerful that they can shock the world." Bucky's eyes flickered with cunning. "Even Tiger died at the hands of humans." "Hey, you kid. Don't say such things that make Brother Aaron angry." The murlocs around couldn't keep their composure any longer, and they scrambled to shout, with a trembling from the soul in their tone. Both Jew and the black belt stood at a distance with serious expressions, and looked at each other. "It seems that this place will be destroyed by Aaron, and it will be rebuilt later." "Red-nosed bastard, how dare you say that?" Aaron's arms protruded as if they were exploding, and his eyes instantly exuded the rage of a pirate, and suddenly rushed through the rain, slamming forward, and his mouth as big as a blood basin exposed sharp teeth. Buggy doesn't dare to be careless. He can split into grains of sand at present, but if Aaron really bites off a part, using sharp teeth with bite force combined with a strong jaw, it will be more difficult than ordinary weapons. Deal with it, afraid of hurting yourself. Even the state of sand grains is still a part of one's body, which is fundamentally different from elementalization. It is still unable to cope with the clenching of the opponent's teeth. Moreover, the duration of the grain of sand state is very short. Once it is too far away from the body, the physical strength will be very vigorously consumed. Land feet. Bucky's knees were slightly bent, and he lifted it suddenly in the air. A pale white slashing airflow pierced through the air. After the shot, he stepped on the ground quickly and used shave to move sideways. The most important thing now is to create chaos in the square in order to find a way to rescue Mochi, rather than having a life and death contest with Aaron. With a leap, Aaron jumped out of the slashing airflow in midair, changed direction in the air, and suddenly stabbed Bucky, who fled under the building like an upright spear. Boom. The stone pillars under the high tower were suddenly shattered, cracks spread out in half of the ceiling, and they fell with a bang. Dust and gravel were stirred up, and then quickly disappeared in the rain. This battle, which was destined to be won or lost, completely started at this moment in the Aaron Empire square with the destruction. Shore edge. Kabaji drew his sword and fought fiercely with Hachi, who was wielding 3 logs. Zauba's 6 hands are very flexible, and he has 2 more advantages in direction and position than humans, which gives him the upper hand in this battle. Not only that, the heavy rain and the unstable ground are used to he who lives in the water has no influence, but Kabaji is deeply disturbed. The log in his hand, which needs to be held together with both hands, restrained Kabaji to some extent. If the opponent's knife cut the log horizontally, the body's movements would reveal flaws, and he stabbed straight along the center of the log. Instead, you will be stuck in the center by the nearly 3-meter-long solid wood, and you will be in a dilemma. The 3 logs surprisingly restrained the light and flexible Kabaji, allowing him to be contained everywhere. This battle really made Kabaji a little aggrieved. If it weren't for the heavy rain, Xiao Ba, who used trees as a weapon, would have no room to maneuver with him. Haunted and haunted. Kabaji's body was like a smooth loach, and he quickly hovered beside Zauba. Sakura Fubuki danced quickly, from left to right, whether long or wide, like pieces of cherry blossoms of different shapes falling in the rain. The strong sense of contrast caused Xiao Ba to slow down his movements because he couldn't find the rhythm of the battle, and his body was broken into long and thin bloody gashes like scales were being scraped. You bastard. Dare to underestimate Zauba, I'm going to get serious, log waltz. Although the damage shared by each part of the body was not excessively painful, he only felt that he was violently humiliated. The 3 logs crossed and circled with 3 pairs of arms, dancing around the body with chaotic rainwater into a seamless circle. Wood whirlwind. Kabaji frowned, and wanted to use paper to draw away the distance, but the soft ground on his feet made his footsteps stagnate for a moment, and he was followed by 3 thick and small 8 sticks from top to bottom. The logs of angry power hit the head, chest and abdomen and legs one after another. Kabaji's body flew out like a ragbag, rolled down on the ground a few times, and barely stopped. Although it's not the complete form of Ludeolyu, it's enough to deal with humans like you. There's no way. In the rain, the Murloc's body will be more flexible and powerful, ha ha ha. Xiao Ba laughed a few times proudly. Surrender obediently, you stupid guy. You dare to be so careless when you only have 1 knife. If you see my 6 knives, you will know what a swordsman is. 6 knife flow. Kabaji stood up, with a bloody cut on his forehead. The blood stains quickly faded under the washing of the rain, and his limbs felt pain and numbness under the impact of at least nearly a ton of force. This reminds me of a bastard named Nanoroa Sauron who uses the 3-sword style. If it is him, I can still admit it, but it's just you. It's not enough to say that a swordsman is not a swordsman. Let me tell you before. The only thing I can't figure out is the rain, and then I will slowly adapt to this battle. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Smelly octopus, you will die soon. Kabaji put the knife blade across his chest, and waved it calmly in the rain. He picked up the pattering raindrops on the bright and white knife steadily, and the crystal clear water droplets looked like stars under the dark sky. Twinkle, twinkle. You're still so stubborn. Xiao Ba wrapped 3 logs in the crook of his arms, raised all his hands up as if to cheer himself up, and then put the 3 thick logs in front of him. Like a long tube, a smug smile appeared on his mouth. Let me, Zauba, teach you a lesson you will never forget. He sprinted suddenly, and the pace of his feet on the wet ground was several notches faster. His body turned into a scarlet afterimage, and the 3 logs were aimed at the center of Kabaji like a tripod, octopus grill. Kabaji felt the wind and rain in the air, held the handle of the knife in his hand, and turned the blade sideways. Suddenly, 6 snow-white blades appeared in the continuous rain, exuding a strange cold light. He stepped forward, and the blade in his hand Sakura Fubuki followed the trend of the wind and rain, swimming freely among the chaotic rainflowers. The sword movement, like pieces of cherry blossoms, intersected with Xiao Ba, who was rushing over in an instant. Sawdust flying. Magnificent blood blossoms suddenly bloomed in front of Xiao Ba's chest. Nearly half of the 3 logs in his hands were cut into small fragments, only half remained. His body was shaking, and he was about to fall to the ground. Don't fall down. Zhaoba supported himself on the ground with 3 logs, panting heavily. Kabaji withdrew his steps, turned his body around, and adjusted his breathing methodically. I can feel the rain a little. Bastard human being. Zhaoba frantically raised 3 pieces of wood. I have mastered all the moves of the swordsman, and I will be hurt by you, a swordsman. You are really joking. If swordsmen are just that simple, then anyone in this world can be a swordsman. Kabaji put the blade across his chest. It has been delayed for a long time, so hurry up, meet Captain Buggy. Xiao Ba is really angry. Go to hell. Xiao Ba turned around, holding the log even more forcefully with his palms. The strength of his fingers were directly embedded in the tree body. He stomped and sprinted suddenly. Takoyaki is open. Rain. Flower of 6 consecutive thorns. Kabaji looked indifferent, and the Sakura Fubuki in his hand once again transformed into 6 blades in the illusion, and came out wildly. In the center of Aaron's Empire Square, the battle situation is very anxious. Buggy didn't intend to fight hand-to-hand with Aaron. After attacking the opponent with his feet, he used shaved feet to change his position. Every time Aaron was caught in the air, he deliberately played with the opponent and increased his hatred value. Every impact of Aaron would destroy part of the basic structure of Aaron's empire. A group of murlocs floating on the sea or diving into the sea couldn't help trembling, but they dared not dissuade the furious brother Aaron. The black belt and Jew watched the situation in front of them, retreated away from the battlefield, and talked with a rather serious expression. I can't get in at all. It's been a long time since I saw Aaron get angry. Sure enough, his destructive power remains the same as before. Aaron is the strongest man in the East China Sea. Even in another 10 years, this sea area will not have our murloc's opponent. During the conversation, tiny bubbles popped up from the pool in the center of the square in the sea, and several murlocs in the water suddenly surfaced and shouted in a panic, "There are people below." Is there someone? Black Belt frowned, and said to Ju, who was beside him, I'll go down and have a look, and you'll be responsible for responding up there. With Chirp's reply, the Black Belt jumped into the pool and glanced around. Some of the murlocs in the water were unconscious and floated up with white eyes, while others curled up and fell. And it was the guy in front of him who caused this result. His 2 flippers swung quickly in the water, lunging towards Mikkel. Mikkel raised his foot and kicked away a murloc who was close to him. He looked up at the black belt rushing over, feeling a little heavy in his heart. As early as just now, she had been observing from a distance. Originally, she wanted to go around from the sea to an uninhabited pool, sneakily rescue Mochi, and help the red-nosed pirate a lot, but who knew that the murlocs in the water were no better than the murlocs on the ground. After solving a few, many murlocs swarmed up. Fortunately, she often dives to observe the reefs and currents in the sea, and her lung capacity is far higher than that of ordinary people. It is not difficult to persist for 10 minutes. It's just that now it seems to be discovered by a very powerful murloc cadre. She quickly swam to the surface. Since she had been discovered, there was no need to stay in the water anymore. The air in her lungs was almost exhausted. The black belt that was approaching quickly did not give her this chance at all. She followed the current and swam for a distance of tens of meters at a speed 10 times faster than that on land. The snail seemed to be in front of Mikkel. Little cat, what are you trying to do? There was a cold smile on the black belt's face, and he said leisurely, of course we acquiesce in allowing you to sneak in and out of the Aaron Empire on weekdays, because you can bring wealth indirectly, but now since you choose if we fight against each other, then we should be prepared to be solved honestly. Grumbling. Mikkel couldn't speak. Tiny air bubbles came out of his mouth, and his 2 green agate-like eyeballs looked at the surrounding water. Although you are not human, you are still an inferior race after all. Let me use Murloc karate to kill you. After all, the black belt didn't hold back anymore, and rushed over like an arrow off the string. The powerful fins on the wrist drew a transparent airflow in the water, possessing 10 times the strength and 10 times the speed of human beings in the water, making his blow fast and heavy. Mikkel watched helplessly as the blow rushed towards the front door, but the resistance of the surrounding water kept delaying her movement. She wanted to adjust her posture in the water to defend, but it was too late. Boom. The sound in the water was very soft, but the blow landed on her face firmly, flying her body more than 10 meters in the water, and slowly stopped the figure against the current. Murloc karate. The black belt approached Mikkel, who was overturned in the water in the blink of an eye, raised his right foot high, and kicked it suddenly. Hua presses down. The kick hit her in the stomach, knocking her down. The last blow. The black belt continued to chase downwards, and at the moment when Mikkel was about to stop, his hand slapped Mikkel's face mercilessly with the momentum of the sea current. Door. Mikkel's body whirled and flew out of the water, smashing the rock wall in the sea with a bang, and the smoke and dust spread out. HMPH. The black belt snorted coldly. I should be dead, in the water, but our Murloc's world. Just as he was about to leave, he saw Mikkel's figure floating in the water, holding a small stone in his hand, and then, as if planning to throw the stone in his hand to a lower position. As the stone in Mikkel's hand fell down, the water in the pool began to become unstable, and gusts of air swept in all directions. Black Belt frowned and felt that there seemed to be wind blowing in the water. What are you doing? Just saying that, his face changed drastically, and he hurriedly swam up with his flippers, but the speed was no longer as fast as before, as if he had been dragged into the endless mud. This strong wind is getting stronger and stronger, suddenly forming a huge submarine vortex, sucking the surrounding seawater to the center, like a sink whose clogged holes are unscrewed. All the Murlocs in the pool are swept away by the vortex pull-over. Mikkel's body was also sucked towards the center by this vortex, but there was no trace of panic on her face. She just used the fast-moving track of the black belt in the flow of seawater brought up when she was attacked to connect the center of the pool. The vortex was created, and the placement of the last stone broke the last balance point in the seawater, allowing the vortex to fully operate. For navigators, it is necessary to know that even slight changes in the ocean current will cause immeasurable consequences. The battle is half done. Next, by breaking a point of balance in the current, the white-haired animal trainer can be sent ashore by using the current from the sea to fill the pool. Ashore. Aaron armed the 2 sets of protruding teeth with both hands, closed them twice, made a click-click, looked at Buggy with a sneer. You seem to be very afraid of my teeth, so I have 3 sets of teeth. Let's see where you can hide. He sprinted quickly, using his unique speed in the rain, and in the blink of an eye, he shortened the distance by tens of meters, biting Buggy with 2 teeth in his hand. Buggy didn't answer. He stepped back briskly, then rushed forward suddenly. His right foot stepped on the ground quickly, and in a daze, his body jumped over Aaron, who was rampant, and fell headfirst into the courtyard wall. Fingering together. Buggy clasped his hands together, stretched out his index finger, and aimed at a point on the back of Aaron's heart, instantly bursting out the strength he had accumulated in his arms with his life. His hands were shot out like cannonballs, and his body was hit by this recoil force pushed back a few meters on the ground. An afterimage was drawn across the air with both hands, and the explosive power made it look like a sharp needle, instantly piercing the cortex on Aaron's unsuspecting back, and pierced into the position about 5 centimeters to the right of the latter's back heart. Unfortunately, the opponent's cortex, the thickness and density of the muscles are very exaggerated, and it is difficult to move any more if it is only half a finger away. Buggy pulled out his hands, and when Aaron grabbed them with a backhand in a rage, he escaped from the opponent's hitting range, returned them to his wrists, and joined them together. He looked at the blood on his finger, and the corner of his mouth revealed a sarcasm. Isn't your blood also red? In the final analysis, the Murlocs are no different from the despicable race you mentioned. Unable to instantly kill the opponent and achieve an overwhelming victory, Buggy is not in a hurry to face life and death in this battle. As long as Aaron is still in a rage and doesn't realize that he can use Mochi to threaten him, then before that, he will not fall into a passive situation. Moreover, Mochi, who is half soaked in the water, is not only a hostage, but also a bait in a trap waiting for him to lean over there. After all, seawater is the natural enemy of all capable people, and this weakness must not be exploited by the opponent. Arrive. Red blood, haha. Aaron turned around, with blue veins on his forehead, and smiled angrily. It's just that God let you lowly humans happen to have the same blood as our noble Murlocs, so what, it's still changed? No, you are just a lowly race. As soon as his words fell, the pool began to heave violently like a boiling boiler, suddenly accumulating a huge force, and the entire sea current turned into a thick water column, engulfing groups of Murlocs inside and rushing towards the air. Mixing with the air, the raindrops formed a water curtain that covered the sky and overturned half of Aaron's square. The seawater poured down and hit the ground of the square, vomiting more than 20 Murlocs and Mochi with a bulging belly on the ground, and the seawater outside the square immediately filled up the pool again, making a violent, popping sound. Shore sound. Buggy backed away a long time ago to avoid being weak from being hit by the seawater, and looked at the pool suspiciously. Although things seemed to be inadvertently beyond his expectations, This ending was a big plus for him, and his worries were gone. Disappeared. He spread out a hand, and quickly pulled Mochi, who was dizzy and numb after being soaked in seawater for too long, to his side, and slapped the latter hard on the cheek. It's time to wake up. Mochi opened his eyes in a panic, his tired head cleared up a lot, he looked around quickly, heard his swollen belly stand up, and shouted angrily, "You bastard Murlocs, how dare you sneak up on Master Mochi?" Then he scratched his head at Bucky, blushed, and said falteringly, "Bah, Captain Bucky. Originally, I could get rid of them all." Standing opposite, Aaron, who was drenched by the seawater, calmed down a lot. He is not too stupid, and finally understood why Bucky angered him just now. At this time, his face was so gloomy that he was about to drip water. It's really cunning human beings, despicable races will only use this kind of boring method. Bucky glanced at the other party indifferently, and responded indifferently. It's just an on-the-spot coping method. After all, I don't like fighting with bayonets. Using shield strike when counter-attacking can also have a good effect. Aaron, the black belt who was also rushed to the ground, stood up, shook his head, and took a fighting stance. I don't doubt your strength, it's just that if we fight together, this battle will end faster. Our time and energy should not be wasted on inferior humans. Ju also jumped off the platform. The reconstruction of Aaron's Empire Square will also take time. It would be better to move quickly to solve them. Aaron's face was gloomy, and he held his hands tightly in front of him. You are all right, but only this red-nosed bastard, I will send him to hell myself. Since you insist, leave the guy next to us. The black belt didn't say much. After getting along for so many years, he understood Aaron's temper. Wow. A surprising thing happened again. Together with the turbulent waves in the pool of the sea, a huge sea beast rushed out, sitting on top of the boy with a curled-up kitten, looking around strangely. Bucky. Why are you all here? Wow, there are Murloc ingredients. Huma excitedly patted Momu's head heavily, making Momoa want to cry. Murloc ingredients? What are you talking about, kid? Aaron felt that his anger was about to be full. These humble human beings stood up arrogantly today to challenge the authority of the Aaron Empire. For the first time in the past 8 years, he felt the long-buried hatred in his heart. The power is so strong. Aaron, let me deal with him. Ju rushed towards Shuma in a hurry, and with a leap, landed on Momu's head, as if opening up this place into a second battlefield. Long-mouthed Murloc ingredients. Shuma yelled without any sense of crisis, carrying Mikkel, who had drunk too much seawater and had insufficient oxygen supply to his brain. I really don't know whether to live or die. Ju whipped his legs and left, rolled up layers of raindrops in the rain, and hit Shuma's head. Shuma took Mikkel in his arms, put his back on his back, stepped on Momu's head with both feet, and moved back quickly. Meanwhile on shore, the black belt stepped forward with his left foot lightly, his body slightly arched, his left hand was on his chest, and his right hand was like a drawn bowstring, slowly moving backwards. The corner of his mouth curled into a sneer. I'll show you how Murloc karate is. Strength. Freeing Li Chi, who had been hiding in his bulging belly, Mochi's body returned to its normal shape, and he rushed to the black belt angrily. It's you, the bastard Murloc who sneaked up on the back of Uncle Mochi's head. Watch me kill you. 1000 watts righteous fist. The black belt's right hand suddenly pushed forward, and a transparent shock wave roared out from his palm, blowing away the surrounding raindrops. Mochi stopped walking, crossed his hands on his chest, and the shock wave with a loud buzzing sound from more than 10 meters away arrived instantly, and the strong force went straight into his body, and his body fell backwards uncontrollably. It is impossible for mere human beings to withstand my trick. Before the black belt could finish his words, Mochi put his toes on the ground, pressed his back against the ground, stepped on it suddenly, and immediately rushed over like a cheetah, clenched his fist tightly with his right hand. I'll give you back this stinky Murloc, shockwave. In the astonished expression, the black belt was driven straight in by a punch, hitting his chest and abdomen. In an instant, his body was almost bent into a curled shrimp shape by the huge force, his eyes stared exaggeratedly, and in the next instant, he was like a shooting star. Hit the tall buildings in Aaron Square. Boom. The stone wall was pierced in an instant, and the tables and chairs in the room. The sound of the inner wall being destroyed was endless, one after another. The whole person did not know how far he was blown away, and only the outermost wall could be seen, the human shape on the body. The surroundings are shattered and destructively extended outwards. It's numb. After hitting this blow, Mochi's body couldn't help shaking, and he began to lose strength. After soaking in the seawater for too long, his body was numb and uncontrollable, and he was very inflexible. Very good, everything is well done. The waves on Aaron's face were no longer so strong, and he was so calm that he looked at the villagers of Kekuyasi village who came late. You, two come to die together. Under the leadership of Ajien, the villagers stood outside the gate of the square, looking at the battle situation in front of them in the ruined Aaron Square in disbelief. They actually forced Aaron to such an extent. Everyone, I believe that the Buggy pirates can defeat Aaron. Don't forget that they have a 10-year legend in this sea area. Yeah, although I don't know why they want to help us, but if it's them, they should be able to do this kind of thing. The more the villagers talked, the more excited they were, and even wanted to rush over to fight, but they were pressed down by a few old men who saw the situation clearly, so they had to stop and shout for help from behind. Ah Jien took 2 steps forward firmly, and looked at Aaron without flinching. Aaron, we have endured you for nearly 8 years, from this moment on, we will never be ruled by you again, the windmill of freedom will never stop. Ha ha ha. Aaron laughed a few times on his back, and then said gloomily, it seems that all the jumping clowns are here. Red-nosed humans are indeed a bit tricky, but can you naively think that the differences in races can be made up so easily? You just watch this battle carefully, and what will happen if you resist me? Aaron spread his hands, and the rainwater accumulated into a small puddle in the blink of an eye in his hands. He waved his palms outwards, seemingly simply playing with water, but countless water droplets were shot out like shotguns, mixing in the water. It hit Buggy in the pattering raindrops. Buggy didn't dodge, and punched holes in his body. In the blink of an eye, all the gaps were filled back. He stepped on his feet, and quickly approached Aaron with the razor. Without coercion, you can fight with all your strength. Haha. Water bomb. Aaron laughed exaggeratedly when he saw that Buggy disappeared in place, and the raindrops received on his palm waved forward like hundreds of bullets, and he quickly got into it. In the pool. Buggy stopped in his footsteps, and threw a kick towards the water surface in a demonstrative manner. The slashing airflow only advanced a few meters in the water, and was completely offset by the force of the water flow. Baba basically wanted to fight in close quarters, but Aaron retreated on purpose. It seems that the evaluation of the opponent can be raised to a higher level, not only the Murloc who can only destroy and kill, but also has a cunning side. The cloudy sky and the pattering rain made the visibility here extremely poor, and the looming black shadows in the pool flew out of the water like arrows leaving the string, without bringing up a trace of extra water. As the afterimage flashed by, Buggy moved his footsteps, staggering a body distance, avoiding Aaron's sharp, jagged nose, and his separated hands rested on Aaron's shoulders in an instant. Aaron, who remained undiminished, shot towards the tall building like a sharp arrow. Just as a sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth, he suddenly felt a strange force turning his body clockwise, and then changed the upward direction, leading him after a 180-degree turn in the air. His body was thrown down. Spiral roller coaster. Aaron's body was quickly spun in the air by Buggy's hands, pushed down instantly, and hit the ground heavily like a whipped top. Boom. The ground cracked, and the raised dust covered the site. Hundreds of water droplets shot out of it suddenly. Buggy didn't dare to retreat carelessly, but the opponent's hundreds of water droplets hit such a wide area. As if being shot by a machine gun bursting into flames, he retreated back unstoppably. It's seawater. A mouthful of blood dripped from the corner of Buggy's mouth. After all, his body cannot be compared with the elementalization of the natural system, and any part of his body can be regarded as independent. Therefore, the moment the seawater touched that point of his body, he felt powerless. Passively turning this point into grains of sand, the impact on the body cannot be dispersed and counteracted. The smoke and dust cleared, and Aaron stood up in disgrace. He was in poor condition. The patterned shirt on his body and the brown bowler cap on his head were also broken, and blood flowed from his forehead. He stuck out his tongue and licked the blood running down his cheeks, and then laughed exaggeratedly. Haha, you are nothing special. The weakness of devil fruit users is really irreparable. Just a little bit of seawater will make you all. It's so embarrassing, it's ridiculous. Yeah, I'm laughing to death. Buggy touched the small wounds on his body that were pierced by the water bullets. The pain was not very painful, but after being hit by the seawater, he felt an uncomfortable feeling. Just keep showing off your words. Aaron sneered, and jumped into the pool again with a plop, and his figure disappeared again. After a while, Aaron's figure did not appear. Buggy's eyes could not help but fall on Shuma, who was fighting with Jiuma with Mikkel, who was still in a coma on his back, and reminded loudly, "Hey, Shuma." As soon as the words fell, Aaron's sharp figure jumped out of the water, and his whole body was like a sharp sword heading straight towards Shuma. Shuma's movements were originally very flexible, but now he is dragging a comatose Mikkel. His figure is much slower, and he is being entangled by the water and iron cannons one after another. Even if he feels the wind behind him, in desperation, it was difficult to avoid it, so I could only turn my body slightly sideways. With a sharp stab from Eren, a slender bloody gash instantly opened on Shuma's defenseless waist. His body continued to fly upwards with inertia, and the water in his hand suddenly flung towards Shuma, mercilessly fell into the sea. Ha ha ha. Amidst Eren's triumphant laughter, Bucky's eyes were heavy, and then he stepped out of Lan's foot, and kicked Ju, who was a little slack and exhausted, with a slashing airflow. Ju's footsteps were unsteady, and his body froze for a moment before being blasted into the pool by the ensuing airflow. Eren's laughter stopped abruptly, his body rolled in the air, and landed on the ground. He realized that if he couldn't get rid of the red-nosed pirate in front of him, it would be superfluous to do anything else. Seawater. Just some more seawater can send you to hell. As he said that, water droplets with a fishy and salty smell slowly secreted from Eren's lavender skin. The murlocs can capture the moisture in the air with their hands, and they can also properly capture it with their bodies in the sea. Some seawater. Next, let you know the gap between races. Hundreds of drops of water shot out from the seawater in his palm, blocking Bucky's direction of action, and he rushed over quickly. Bucky controlled his sandy body to whirl around quickly, turning into a terrifying whirlwind of the human body, engulfing several meters of rainwater around it, and releasing it forward in the next instant, forming a rainwater barrier to slow down the incoming rain. The strength of the water bullet. It's useless, it's useless. The thoughts that shocked Bucky's body to be split into such a small degree just flashed in Eren's mind. Foam to grab. As soon as the minced meat was about to be squeezed into the palm of his hand, a little bit of rainwater on the right suddenly formed a leg, and a leg whip slammed towards Eren's temple. Eren's body was blasted towards the tall buildings in the square like a fired shell. Boom. The ceiling in the building collapsed, the stone wall crashed down, and the dust washed down. All parts of Bucky's body were reunited. Although the active sand granulation would consume a lot of physical strength, the pressure brought by the seawater would be much reduced. There was no movement in the house for a long time, and a faint streak of blood could be seen on the surface of the pool in the square, and it was unknown whose blood it was. Finally, a figure stepped out of the collapsed part of the building, holding a huge saw, Zhangfeng, in his hand. It's really tough. Bucky said something silently in his heart. Compared with Crow, who is as agile as an assassin, Eren is more like a tank with thick blood and high defense. This is indeed the case in the original book. Crow just took a few hits from Luffy, and his fragile body couldn't bear the blows. And Eren let Lu Fei hit a few sets of combo punches, and he seemed to be okay. In this environment where survival is greater than output, tanks are more powerful than assassins. Eren supported Zhangfeng with both hands, and rushed towards Bucky quickly. It seemed that because of his rage, he no longer cared whether this weapon was effective for the opponent, and just wanted to vent his inner riot and hatred fiercely, destroying everything in front of him. Outside the wall of Eren's square, a girl with orange hair was leaning on the wall with her slender feet slanted on the ground. She lowered her head slightly, her face didn't show much joy, and she didn't show her feelings for the battle situation in the square. With a tense look, there seemed to be an invisible barrier between the surrounding villagers and her, which did not affect her at all. There was a sound of footsteps, and the swordsman whose hair covered half of his face dragged the lifeless octopus man over and stopped in front of her. You are Nami. Nami raised her eyes and silently looked at the swordsman in front of her. Kabaji said unhurriedly, the purpose of Captain Bucky's coming here seems to be you, but I don't see anything worthy of praise in you. Although we are indeed short of navigators, we can't see it in you. A hint of wanting to be one of us. How could it be? Nami forced a smile, and hurriedly defended, Captain Bucky is willing to help me. Let us defeat Eren. Each of us is very grateful to Dade, he is a hero. As long as the Eren Empire is defeated, destroy, I will definitely agree to his request. It's really not pertinent. Kabaji didn't say any more, and passed Nami by himself. Although he planned to use the capture of Murlocs as a bargaining chip at the beginning, but the battle progressed to such an intense level. This half-dead octopus hostage seemed to be there is no use value anymore. His eyes stopped in the square, and he saw a wet boy crawling out from the edge of the pool, with a girl who kept choking on water on his back, and landed ashore with some difficulty, gasping for breath. This battle is also divided into winners and losers. The red color of blood and the black pirate flag representing violence and shadow on the high-rise building in Eren Square became blurred in the gradually heavy rain and the mist blowing from the sea, only accompanied by the shock below, suddenly accelerated several times. Eren waved Zhangfeng furiously, chasing Bucky and destroying the entire square everywhere, He had lost his mind. He swung one hand holding a huge saw and chopped horizontally, and the other hand followed one after another, creating a small. The seawater was shot like a shotgun. There are traces of broken ground everywhere, and the dense cracks are like spider webs that are constantly extending. In the original book, Eren seems to have never made such a move. Yes, it should be this annoying heavy rain that added a big buff to the opponent. Bucky's feet stomped on the ground and moved back tens of meters, and immediately used his life to accumulate strength in his abdomen. He suddenly spun and separated his lower body, hard to catch the bullet like water droplets flying in the air, and his thighs were broken. After a few bloody cuts, he sprinted even more quickly. Lanjiao pancake charge. When the rotating lower body was about to approach Eren, it suddenly shot out a slashing airflow, accelerated by centrifugal force. The speed of the slashing airflow was 2 or 3 times faster than usual, picking up the surrounding raindrops and blasting Eren, who was caught off guard. Chest. Poochie. The blood bloomed, and this really broke Eren's skin, leaving a long and thin wound of nearly half a meter on his chest and abdomen. If ordinary people were injured to this extent, they would probably be so seriously injured that they would not have the strength to act without dying. But after all, the other party was the overlord of the East China Sea, and his wounded body repelled back more than 10 meters, and then rushed back like a hyena, like a trapped beast in a cage, struggling before dying. The seawater-stained hand was firmly held on Bucky's leg that was left in the air before he could fly back, and his sharp teeth bit down fiercely. The severe pain on the calf could still be clearly transmitted to his mind. Bucky snorted, and the other unrestrained foot separated from the lower body again, lifted it high in midair and slammed it heavily on Eren's head that refused to let go, releasing the power of his whole body. Boom. The loud sound was like thunder on the ground, and everyone present was startled. The surroundings were filled with dust, and their vision was unclear. During the rainwash, the smoke and dust dissipated, and finally the huge round pit centered on Eren and sunk about 3 meters deep could be seen, extending outward in a semicircle. Eren's proud nose in the center of the round pit was broken by external force. He struggled to put his hands on the ground, but he could no longer stand up helplessly. His body swayed on the ground, and he didn't even have the strength to turn over. Eren was defeated. Captain Bucky has won. We are finally free. Can we not pay heavy taxes? Eren's terrifying image, deeply rooted in the hearts of the people and his body now unable to move, formed a strong visual effect, constantly impacting the hearts of the villagers in Kokoyashi village. They rubbed their eyes, even though they were expecting in their hearts, they really saw this scene. Instead, I couldn't believe it. Bucky retracted his lower body and walked towards Eren. After merging with the body, the sore spot on the foot was transmitted directly to the brain, and this battle lasted for a long time. Nami. His gaze fell on the orange-haired girl standing in a daze at the gate. Although it was only the first time he had seen the navigator of the former Straw Hat Pirates, the only one who could have this appearance was Nami is gone. The upper body is wearing a light green speckled sling shirt, and the lower body is cropped leggings. Under the dark sky, the whiteness of the ankles is more obvious, but compared with this rather sexy dress, the face is stunned for a long time and cannot be recovered. His expression was out of place. Bucky was not in a hurry to deal with Eren, but instead kicked an iron knife on the ground in front of Nami. Give you a chance to take revenge with your own hands. What could be more enjoyable than killing your enemies with your own hands? Nami trembled slightly, picked up the iron knife on the ground, held it with both hands, and walked towards Eren in disgust. It was this man who killed Burmel and plunged the whole village into panic and tax burdens among them. I wanted to kill this man even in my dreams, this man who brought me 8 years of hell. She raised the knife above her neck, and the sharp point of the knife pointed at Eren, who had only the last bit of consciousness left, and stabbed down with all her strength. A white light flashed across Eren's square. Boom, thunder. The tip of the knife stuck into the stone ground next to Eren's body. Nami knelt down powerlessly, tears kept falling, and murmured in a low voice. I can't do it. Eren destroyed my village, but if I kill him, I won't be as cruel as him. I don't want to be such a person. Bucky looked at Nami silently. This is really a maverick pirate thief. He picked up the iron knife on the ground with his foot and held it in his hand. It is a good thing to insist on one's nature, but it is another matter to overcorrect. The light of the knife shone in the rain, pierced into Eren's back heart impartially, and pierced into the ground. Blood flowed from Eren's chest, and accumulated more and more along the ground, forming a puddle of blood. Eren's eyes gradually lost their expression and turned gray. All right. Bucky opened his arms and said loudly to everyone in front of him, you, from now on, are liberated and free. Become free, liberated. At the moment of Eren's death, The big rock that was nervous, sad and hopeful in everyone's heart finally fell to the ground, and they raised their arms and shouted, "We finally get rid of Aaron's rule." There were cheers one after another. The tall buildings in Aaron's square did not collapse, and the flags on the roof were still fluttering in the wind, but Aaron, as the spiritual leader, lost his life at this moment, completely dead. The Aaron Empire has existed in name only. Amidst the cheers of the crowd, Buggy came over, holding the panicked naval officer in his hand. "Captain Buggy, what should we do with this mouse?" "Yo, we meet again, old man." Buggy raised his eyes to Colonel Mouse, and teased him, not very concerned. "Buggy, Captain Buggy. Hey, hey." The mouse smiled awkwardly, thinking that the two pirate groups would both be defeated, so he could take advantage of the opportunity to catch the leak. But who knows, the situation on the scene was much different from what he had imagined. Discrepancies. Buggy said, "Take him and the group of Murlocs together. As for what to do, let them handle it themselves." He looked up at the sky. It was about to clear up. A day later. All the Murlocs in the Aaron Empire Square were cleaned up, tied together in bundles, tied tightly with thick knots twisted from several strong hemp ropes, separated and guarded, waiting for the Navy to score 77 points. The Ministry came to hand over the escort. As for Octopus, after all, he is Rayleigh's savior. For the face of Pluto, Buggy has done enough of his ideological work and let him leave Kokoyasi village with the sea beast Momoa in repentance. The news of Aaron's defeat spread to the more than 20 once-ruled villages centered on Kokoyasi village and radiating out within a day. After the ferocious pirate flags in Aaron Square were replaced with white flags, people in Aaron Square all covered their faces and cried bitterly, reporting tears to the group. Probably the tears called happiness. Although it was still raining and the air was still very humid, the banquet to celebrate the liberation was still held in full swing under the canopy that was set up. Everyone had beaming expressions on their faces. A wide variety of drinks, barbecues, and fruit slices were placed on various tables. In the middle of the banquet was a 2-meter-high cream cake with "Freedom" engraved on it. Character pattern. Jian, Nagao, and all the people who can be named are happily jubilant, celebrating and laughing at the banquet at the moment. Kabaji and Moki were exaggerated by the enthusiastic atmosphere around them. Under the instigation of a few villagers who were in high spirits, you and I were fighting each other for a cup of wine without showing any weakness. The two did not have a deep hatred, but they often met in Baki in the early years. Over the years, the sense of confrontation has long since become a habit that cannot be changed. Shu Ma took Li Ji to taste all kinds of delicate and delicious food on the table. Today, this lion, whose mind is full of food, finally got his wish. The sashimi with cumin and pepper knocked the whole table to the ground, but the surrounding villagers just laughed, not angry. Shuma, on the other hand, ate and ate, picked up stones and threw balloons in the air. Every time he heard the sound of balloons bursting, he would always jump a few times with joy, feeling very novel. Kei Ya was still taking care of Nuokagao and Callus' younger sister in the orangery hut, and Callus was also helping. As the patient's condition gradually improved, Kia's mood became clearer, and she became much more relaxed. On the high slope of Kekayasi village, in front of the tomb with a cross, the grass is lush and lush, blowing by the rain and sea breeze, like endless waves, undulating outwards layer by layer, which is extremely beautiful. If it weren't for this rain, the scenery seen from here in the distance should make people linger. Nami slowly poured the yellowish-orange whiskey on the cross, then took back the remaining half jug and put it on the ground. "Bermel, your position is really good. You can move forward looking at the whole sea unscrupulously. You can also have a panoramic view of the whole village. Don't think that I'm here to chat today. I'm here to tell you a good news. The village is liberated." "Well, I'm liberated." The sea breeze blew, and her orange hair was blown back. She picked up the half jug of wine on the ground, unscrewed the cork, and took a sip with her neck up, and immediately he lowered his head and wiped the wine stains from the corner of his mouth with his arm. His eyes were buried in the shadows. "But you know, what I hate the most are pirates. Let me become the navigator of the pirate group, in that kind of environment that makes people feel numb. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, I will go crazy." It fell. Pop. Pop. It was the sound of footsteps stepping on the somewhat muddy grass, bending the grass. A red-nosed man wearing a captain's cloak walked over from the slope. He didn't speak immediately, but walked up to Nami's side, sat cross-legged, took the orange wine from Nami's hand unceremoniously, and looked at himself. After taking a sip, he put the jug on the ground. "If you're not in a hurry, listen to me tell a story." Seeing that Nami didn't speak, Buggy said slowly. "On the Great Route, there is a country that is covered with layers of snow all year round. On the end street of the capital, there is a ragged little boy curled up in the alley all the year round. Whenever someone comes, he picks up the matchbox in the basket. Come forward to sell, sir, sir. This box of matches of mine is a good match, as long as a few Baileys, it can light fire and smoke. Some of those passers-by would buy a few boxes, but most of them left in a hurry indifferently. However, even so, the little boy never showed a disappointed expression, because he had already stolen the money bags of those people in the contact. The money he stole was not for himself, of course, but for his sister, a 6-year-old girl. The little girl lived in a medical clinic in a village outside the capital. She had a strange disease and needed to mix various poisons to suppress the onset of the disease. However, these poisons cost a lot of money. The quack doctors in the clinic often say to him, "Your sister will live only with me, and if you risk taking her out, she will die quickly, and if you can't afford the money, I will throw her out likewise." The little boy hated that doctor, and even hated all the doctors. The doctors who are philanthropic on the surface are all worms that get into the money hole behind their backs, but he has no choice. In order to delay the life of his sister, he continued to steal. Zhang was also caught and severely beaten. In severe cases, his entire arm was even broken. He kept feeding that greedy quack with money, until one day, a doctor with excellent medical skills came to the village. The doctor is a capable person. During many years of traveling, he has learned various methods of curing diseases. Even if it is terminally ill in the eyes of outsiders, he still has a way to treat it. After learning that there is a little girl suffering from this disease in the village, so he thought of helping. He has rich experience and has encountered such cases before. Everyone in the village said that if it was him, he might be able to save the little girl. But the little boy who hated all doctors stopped him. He would rather trust the quack doctor who used poison to support the girl's life than the doctor who had a good prescription, because he lacked a kind of trust in his heart. Buggy took another sip of his drink and stopped talking. And after, Nami asked calmly, but she also wanted to know the follow-up story in her heart. There is no later, the ending is not important. What? Nami looked at Buggy in surprise. Buggy stood up and said calmly. You would rather believe that Aaron, who killed his stepmother, would abide by the promise of money, than believe that a person who is desperate to help you defeat the enemy and liberate the entire village is labeled as a pirate. Then put the opponent into the same villain level as Aaron regardless of right and wrong, and can only judge the development track of things subjectively, but can't learn to accept and recognize. Don't you think you are very similar to that little boy? Buggy raised his head, and when the last drop of rain hit his face, the cloud began to dissipate, and the long-lost sunshine finally came to the earth again. I looked at the pocket watch looted from the Aaron Empire. The time was about the same, and the kitten's guess was very accurate. Buggy shook off his somewhat damp cloak, and left, leaving Nami speechless. There is already a better substitute than you. I don't need you anymore. After that, just do whatever you want. As night falls and the weather clears up, the bright moon pours down countless moonlight, as if covering the earth with a thin layer of gauze, which is beautiful and fascinating. The lively atmosphere of the banquet still persisted, and all the villagers fell asleep reeking of alcohol, snoring subtly. In the cottage by the orange grove, the lights were on. Mikkel packed up his clothes. Nuo Kagao, I'm leaving. Under Kia's increasingly skilled treatment, Nuo Kagao recovered very quickly. If it wasn't for Nagao's warning and exhortation, she would have gotten out of bed and walked around a long time ago. At this time, she stood up and put her hands behind her head, with a calm expression talking. You're leaving. I've long expected such a day, but I'm afraid that after a long time, I can't help but miss you. I've been here for more than a year, and I'm going to go back, and take a ride with the red nose. Nuo Kagao looked at Mikkel's busy back. Aaron was defeated by that red-nosed Buggy. He came here for Nami, and you. Why did you do this? HMPH. Mikkel snorted coldly. Who told that red nose to take the credit for me? I saved up 200 million berry and liberated the village, but I didn't know it was a futile effort, and Aaron was not defeated by me. The life-saving grace must not be clear. Nami, originally I just hate pirates, and letting her become a pirate must be more difficult than taking her life, but if I replace her as a navigator, firstly, I can repay my kindness, and secondly, she doesn't have to be so painful. Does it mean isn't it the best of both worlds? Nuo Kagao shook her head. I didn't intend to ask you to repay the kindness. You just hang around here every day, and no one will gossip about you. The cat's reward is not so casual. Anyway, I made an agreement with my red nose. As long as I can predict the time of the sun and prove that I am a cat with navigation skills, he will allow me to board the ship. I don't have the right to make decisions for you. What about Nami, does she know? Mikkel stuck out his tongue. I haven't told her yet. Anyway, she will know when the time comes. Nuo Kagao smiled and said nothing. In the early morning of the next day, Buggy summoned Kabaji, Mochi, Shuma and Kia, raised the sails, lowered the anchor, and left with the new navigator. The Bikadup made waves on the sea and set off. On the deck, Mikkel said goodbye to everyone in Kokoyashi village with tears in his eyes, and waved his hands reluctantly. Nami, Nuo Kagao, Uncle Jien, everyone, take care. Buggy squinted at the other party. The night before yesterday, she came over suddenly, and took out a navigation notebook that she recorded casually to prove her excellence, and made a bet on predicting the weather, and asked to replace Name boarded the ship to become a navigator, and then entangled in giving a series of convincing evidences, such as she came from the New World, she is more familiar with the weather of the Great Sea Route, and she will not make mistakes when sailing. That night, Buggy thought twice and agreed to the other party's request, and then the weather also cleared up at the time the other party expected. Of course, Buggy still tried to win Nami onto the ship, but the ship was unable to return to his heart. After all, I couldn't keep the other party, even though I still felt a little regretful, but in view of the achievement of the goal, I decided not to stay any longer. Nami on the shore was full of worries. Buggy's story made her toss and turn all night. She always felt that it was reasonable and very wrong. However, her heart began to change a little bit about pirates, and there seemed to be outstanding people in it. But even so, she didn't want to get on a strange ship and become partners with a group of strange people who didn't know if she could be friends with each other. But when she finally found out that Mikkel replaced her as a crew member on the pirates, she felt like it's a mix of 5 flavors, like overturning a seasoning bottle, including luck, surprise, guilt, anxiety, and self-blame. When she came back to her senses, Mikkel had long left in her own hesitation, without any chance to discuss. Why not wait? Maybe she can come up with a better way, so that the pirate Buggy will not make any calculations, take the initiative to leave. But will there be such a person? Nami's eyes hesitated, and she just relied on her faith to help others without any reward or hesitation. Will there be such pirates in this world? Nuo Kagao next to him seemed to see what Nami was thinking, and put his right hand on the latter's shoulder. I don't think he will be the first pirate to shock us. In the future, you will definitely be able to meet the partner in your heart and help you realize your dream of painting the world. Mikkel was still heartbroken, but as soon as he left Kokoyashi village, he seemed to be a different person. There was no trace of tears, and he stretched out his index finger and kept poking Buggy's cheek. Red nose. I promised you to be the navigator of this ship. You must not try to get Nami's idea, or I will never end with you. Do you know? Do you know? Do you know? As he spoke, he seemed to think it was fun, and he couldn't stop poking his hands at all, but his face became more and more angry. Buggy gave her a blank look and threw a ball of wool onto the deck. Curly, curly, Mikkel's eyes flashed stars, and he jumped at the ball of wool without hesitation, enjoying the ball of wool on the deck, rolling around, his cat's ears quivering non-stop. Shuma walked slowly to Mikkel's side, squatted down, looked at the latter curiously, stretched out a hand, and touched Mikkel's head. Snapped. His hand was just halfway out before it was mercilessly knocked off. Mikkel stared at him dissatisfied and pouted. Let me touch it, bear. Shuma didn't look discouraged at all, and stretched out his hand again. Snapped. Being slapped mercilessly again, Mikkel bared his teeth and claws. Idiot, I'm a cat, not a bear, not a bear, I'm a cat. Hey, it's not a bear, is it a cat bear? It's a cat, it's a cat, it's a cute cat. Oh, Shuma didn't care about what the other party wanted to say at all, and at some point he took out a branch and poked at the ants on the deck who didn't know where they came from. Come and play with ants, it's fun. Playing with ants, yes, yes. Mikkel subconsciously raised a smile and responded happily, but as soon as the words came out of her mouth, she realized something was wrong. Don't treat me like a child. The weather was just right, and Kia was sitting on the armchair on the deck, flipping through the medical books that Nagao had given her, turning her head to look at Mikkel, who was fighting with Shuma from time to time, and smiling knowingly. Although she didn't know Baba how did Uncle G abduct this little cat onto the boat, but the atmosphere makes people feel very warm and at ease. This boat is indeed a very interesting boat. The sky is cloudless and the sea is turbulent with blue waves. The seagulls along the way flap their wings and fly to the distance in 2s and 3s, looking for a habitat to settle down. After finding the navigator, we can finally embark on the Great Route, but before that, we have to go to another place, the sea restaurant Balati. Buggy had wanted to go there a long time ago, and now he happened to be on the way, passing through Balati, then going to Rogue Town, and entering the Upside Down Mountain. It's been 2 days since I left Kokoyashi village. Kia stretched out her parasol and sat quietly on a wicker chair, reading medical books. Mikkel at her feet curled up on the deck, squinting, covered his face with a white painter's hat, lazily basking in the sun. Li Chi at the bow squatted down and took over the task of steering the steering wheel. Shuma on the side patted his shoulder heartlessly, and couldn't stop praising him. It's amazing, Li Chi's ingredients. Kabaji and Mochi went to the training room inside the ship. Bucky leaned against the fence of the ship, watching the giant carp-like ship gradually grow in size in the distance, and looked back at Mikkel. The control was not bad, and I corrected the navigation route occasionally, and then went straight to the sea restaurant without deliberate acceleration. Well, although I don't know what kind of cat it is quite reliable. Wow. What a big sea beast. Shuma exclaimed excitedly. Sure enough, this guy can maintain a vigorous attitude at all times. Compared with that lazy cat, it is really a stark contrast. It's not a sea beast, it's the place where you're going to study for 2 days. Bucky patted Shuma on the head. Shuma's cooking skills are not bad, but sometimes there are too few cooking tricks. Since he is on the way, he should take this opportunity to study hard. After all, Baladi is a well-known restaurant in the East China Sea. And there is a chef in charge. If you can polish Shuma's culinary skills, you won't be able to eat one flavor every day after entering the great route that may take several years. The Bakudop arrived at Barati following the sea wind and waves in just a moment, but in order not to hinder the business, the ship dropped anchor and moored at the back of Barati. Bucky's group got off the boat, and Mikkel, who was sleeping, was a little reluctant, but under Bucky's instructions, he was dragged into the gate by Humara. Don't pull me, you idiot. Mikkel was quite dissatisfied and followed behind complaining. Be good, kitty. Shu Ma ignored the complaints and said to himself. The noise of a group of people caught the attention of everyone in the restaurant. A young couple sitting in the northeast corner of the restaurant looked at each other nervously. That red nose is. Hey! Don't look at him, bow your head quickly, don't be noticed, they are the most vicious pirates on this sea. The old man drinking coffee in the southwest corner was trembling with his cup. He didn't know when the coffee was spilled all over his body. He stared blankly. Could it be that the pirate group led by the clown Bucky who offered a bounty of 19.5 million Baileys? Let's kill. The originally lively restaurant suddenly became very quiet, only rustling sounds remained. Chef Paddy, who shaved his head and looked like a gourd, squeezed out an exaggerated smile, rubbed his hands, and walked up quickly. Welcome, Mr. Bastard. Bucky led Shuma and the others to the dining table by the window, sat down, and looked at the menu on the table. Call your chef over. My guest. What can I do with the boss? Paddy rubbed his head. Bucky took out a stack of Baileys from his body and put it on the table. This is a tip. You'll be charged without change. Paddy put it in his pocket unceremoniously, then invite the boss over here. A moment later, Jepu, with his beard tied into 2 sexy braids, a tall chef's hat a meter high, and 1 foot supported by a wooden stick, came out. His eyes fell on Bucky, a little dignified. What can you do with me, Bucky the clown? Don't be nervous. Bucky's mouth drew an arc, and he snapped his fingers. Mochi on the side reached into his stomach knowingly, and suddenly took out a big bag and put it on the ground. Bucky pushed Shuma, who was looking around. Here is the 100 million Baileys used to repair the restaurant. Please take care of this unseemly apprentice. We will leave in 2 days, 2 days later, here before. I hope you can teach him some skills without leaving any room. Jepu narrowed his eyes slightly, looked at the red nose who was at the top of the Eastern Sea Pirates, then looked at Shu Ma, and suddenly snorted. I want to learn my skills in 2 days, I think too much of this brat. It's not that I look down on him, it's that I look up to you, the great chef of Donghai. If it's someone else, of course I'm not sure, but if it's you, 2 days is enough. HMPH. Jepu raised his eyebrows in great satisfaction, and turned to leave. For your sincerity's sake, just let this brat follow me for 2 days. Bucky sneered, put away his smile immediately, and then looked at Shu Ma seriously. Shu Ma, you have to know that you have a glorious mission on your shoulders. Shu Ma, who had always been heartless, suddenly felt the weight given by the captain, and suddenly straightened his back, his eyes lit up with fire. Yes, I will definitely work hard. Then, he picked up the bag of Bailey and followed Zap. It would be great if that guy Shuma could do more tricks. Mochi swallowed, looking forward to it. That's my plan. Bucky handed Paddy the menu with the names of the food on it. Serve the food first, and the bill will be calculated separately. Wait a minute, bastard. Paddy took the order with a smile on his face, and walked to the kitchen. Seeing that Bucky didn't come to find fault, the diners around him were secretly relieved, and finally they were able to enjoy the food on the table with peace of mind. After a while, the surroundings began to become lively again. The gramophone in the corner plays a disc and plays soothing music. The well-designed windows let in the sunshine, which is not too violent, and falls very warmly on the solid floor. It can be seen that this place is carefully maintained. It's a great place to relax. A man wearing a striped shirt and black tie and a black suit outside the restaurant has blonde hair covering his left eye and curly eyebrows on his right eye. Holding the dinner plate, he walked over casually and like a gentleman. Several guests, these are the meals you ordered. He put the food on the plate on the table, and was about to leave. His right eye suddenly expanded to look at Kaya, who was quietly flipping through the medical books, and his left hand covered his throbbing chest. I smell the smell of love. Sanji suddenly knelt down on one knee. The thin cigarette in his mouth was replaced by roses at some point, and he opened his hand upwards, facing Kaya, who was suddenly at a loss like a deer, calmly and orderly said. Beautiful lady, have you felt the power of the god of Cupid? My heart is being drawn by it, step by step towards your heart. Listen to it. It is like the surging sound of a magnificent tide, surging and hot. Hee hee. Kaya smiled awkwardly. Everyone else in the room was sweating coldly on their foreheads. This is really a strange cook. Sanji, come on, stop harassing the female guests. They are big pirates, of course. If you want to be a pirate, no one will stop you. Chef Carl, wearing sunglasses that can barely block his eyes, looked at it. Looking at the movement here, he said, dissatisfied. It's not your turn to teach me. Sanji stood up and adjusted his tie. Do you want to drive me away and take over the position of head chef? Stop dreaming. Cut. Carl snorted and stopped talking. I interrupted your meal. Sanji bowed gentlemanly and slowly backed away. The food on the table is very rich, thick soup, toast, juice drinks, salads, grilled lobster, grilled fish fillets and so on. Let's start. Buggy unceremoniously picked up a piece of bread and put it in his mouth. The bread was very crispy and tasted very good. With the crispy yellow cream inside, it felt a bit sweet and numb. It was the same as Shuma's. The slightly spicy meals that come out tend to be 2 levels. The others also moved their chopsticks tacitly, and ate their fill. Even Mikkel, who has always been lazy, saw the grilled tender fish fillets, and hurriedly brought them to him, and stuffed them into his mouth without any scruples, his face showing there was a lovely blush. Half of the food on the table was swept away like a storm. Which one is Buggy? A group of perversely dressed pirates appeared at the entrance of the restaurant, surrounded by a man in gorgeous clothes. The visitor is not good. The guests around stopped their movements, and their eyes were once again attracted to them. Although there are pirates visiting Balati all the year round, there are actually 2 waves of people today, and one of them is so arrogant. It seems that this day is not good peaceful. At the table by the window, Buggy peeled the shell of the lobster indifferently, dipped the golden shrimp meat into the dipping sauce, and put it into his mouth. I'll say it again, Buggy, come out to me. I'm going to take your head today and make your name known to the East China Sea. The pirate in gorgeous clothes glanced around. Patty and Carl in the kitchen rushed out when they heard the movement. Patty stared angrily. Hey, you bastards, don't block the door, you will disturb other guests. The blue veins on the face of the gorgeously dressed pirate. How dare a mere waiter talk to me like that? I'm the lone wolf. Cherkson, who is offering a reward of 600 million. As soon as the words fell, a heavy force came towards him. Chi Erkson couldn't dodge in time. He was punched and flew out, and landed on the deck outside. His life and death were unknown. Mochi threw the chestnut in his hand into his mouth, and said vaguely while chewing. Captain Buggy said, if you don't leave, you will end up like him. Uncle Mochi will not show mercy. Several of his subordinates rushed out of the deck and shook Cherkson's body. Boss Lone Wolf, stop joking. Hurry up and get rid of that white-haired bastard. The latter lay motionless on the deck with his dead body. Hateful. The pirates at the door gritted their teeth and looked inside and out. The leader of the pirate group, the lone wolf boss, was knocked down with one blow, and the opponent was only one of his subordinates. A few words such as, we will definitely come back, damn it, wait for me, and then fled and left the restaurant. I really don't know what they are here for. There are quite a lot of pirates who are rampant and reckless in this sea, Buggy thought indifferently. The movements of his hands never stopped, as if it had never happened anything like that. Mikkel stood up abruptly just now, and sat back on the chair. She remembered that she no longer had to steal the treasures of those pirates. The small episode in the restaurant caused a few timid customers to check out and leave in a hurry, but most of them sat in their seats. After all, for the regular customers who live an ordinary life, such a fight can let them regain a trace of blood. It feels like. Although the battle ended very quickly. After clearing the meals on the table, Buggy and his group returned to the Bakudop, resting when they should rest, exercising when they should exercise, reading books when they should read, and the leisurely time flies by in a blink of an eye. Shuma at the other end had eaten the soft dessert made by Zap, and said it was delicious, and followed the latter for special training in agreement. As night fell and it was time for Baladi to close, Shuma finally cooked the first delicacy under Zapu's special training, and it was being served on the dining table at this time. Golden paella. A large plate of golden rice is like a building made of bricks and tiles paved layer by layer, and various seafood is used to draw the building pattern, which has a rare three-dimensional effect. The man moved his index finger. Jepu looked at the fried rice in front of him with a straight face. Hey, Sanji, come here too. Smelly old man, didn't you see that I was cleaning up? Sanji walked over reluctantly with a dissatisfied face. Jepu hit Sanji on the head with the tall chef hat on his head. I told you to come here, you come here, the wings are hard, do you want to fly away? HMPH, old man, I won't leave here unless you're dead. Sure enough, he is a ruthless brat. Come on, this is made by Shuma Kid, you can try it too. Saying this, Jepu divided the rice into 2 portions and put them on 2 plates. A plate was pushed in front of Sanji. Sanji sat down and gave Jepu a weird look. How could the stinky old man care so much about a kid? He picked up the spoon and put the paella into his mouth at the same time as Jepu. I'm starting. The two munched on paella. Shu Ma, who was standing aside, looked at the two expectantly. How? This is the paella I made with all my strength, it must be delicious. The two swallowed the paella, and their cheeks were flushed like a burning cloud at dusk, and the bean sweat that was continuously secreted from their foreheads dripped down their cheeks onto the plate. Their eyes widened in disbelief, and the top of their heads was like the volcano that was about to erupt, emitted bursts of red smoke, and the surrounding area exuded compelling heat. What kind of spiciness is this? Puff. 2 sounds of nausea sounded at the same time. Sanji and Jepu hurriedly covered their mouths, swallowed the paella that was about to be spit out, and then delivered the rice on the plate to their mouths in a very tacit and difficult way. Smelly old man, although you have lived a comfortable life for so many years, it seems that you have not forgotten. Stinky boy, don't pretend to be in front of me, listen up, don't waste food, or I will beat you to death. Listening to the two wolfing down their meals and having a harmonious conversation from time to time, Shu Ma proudly rubbed his fingers under his nose. The meals I made with all my strength are really delicious. On the second day of coming to Barati, after enjoying lunch, Buggy and his group continued to sit in the corner of the restaurant, tasting the pastries, sweets and coffee made by Sanji himself, and reading the newspapers in their hands. This is really a leisurely time. Buggy would occasionally have a sudden thought. This kind of life is not bad. Let's just live life like this. Of course, this thought was quickly thrown out of his mind. Finally, the rare tranquility was broken, and 3 figures walked in at the door of the restaurant. The man with the word, "See," tattooed on his right cheek spread his hands helplessly and said, Hey, brother Sauron, you led him astray again. That lone wolf, Cherkson went south. Stop rambling. I know, I'm paddling south. The green-haired Soren's mouth twitched. The man with the thief, tattooed on his left cheek muttered softly, but you're obviously heading west. Joseph, Johnny. The 2 of you are endless, didn't you just let that bastard escape by chance? Soren's face was full of black lines. Hey. The 2 quickly waved their hands and said with wry smiles, we don't really have any objections, we are all following brother Soren's orders. Then eat first, replenish your energy, and then go after that lonely wild wolf. After Sauron finished speaking, he took the 2 people who nodded quickly and sat down on the seats in the restaurant. The cook and waiter at the side hurriedly wrote down the meals that the other party wanted, and after a while, they put the food together. The 3 gobbled it up. Patty, who happened to come out, looked at the plate in the hand of the serving chef, glanced at it subconsciously, and then quickly grabbed the guy. Hey, are you serving those boys? Yes, what's the matter? They all look like paupers. But they are guests. A guy without money is not a guest. Patty rolled up his sleeves and walked up. There was an ugly smile on his face. Master bastard, the food here is not cheap. Johnny chewed the chicken leg in his hand, and patted the table vigorously. What's the matter with you? Are you afraid that we won't pay you? Patty rubbed his hands together. Yes, you should pay first. TCH. What the hell kind of restaurant is this? Joseph dissatisfiedly took out all the Baileys in his pocket and put them on the table. Take them all, no need to look for them. Seeing the scattered change in front of him, which totaled less than, Patty's face darkened. Are you sure you're not joking? Who made a joke with you? Isn't it enough? Joseph and Johnny, like Sauron, are both bounty hunters, but they don't have the habit of saving money. Once they get the bounty from the pirates, they spend it lavishly. The 3,000 Baileys are already theirs, and all the belongings of the three of Sauron. It turns out that I'm a bastard who wants to eat for free. Customers who have no money should get out of here. After finishing speaking, Paddy's thick arm smashed down unceremoniously. The defenseless Johnny, who was sitting on the farthest side, was smashed to the ground with the chair directly, and he was so dizzy that he couldn't stand up. Joseph quickly put down the food in his hand, squatted down and shook Johnny nervously. My partner, are you okay? It turned out to be a black shop. Sauron snorted coldly, facing Paddy's oncoming punch, stretched out his palm, blocked it directly, and slowly squeezed it tightly in his hand. However, you have encountered a hard stubble. Green-haired bastard. Let me go. Paddy suddenly realized that the man in front of him was so powerful that he couldn't pull out his hand at all. No. A foot like a whirlwind suddenly pressed down from top to bottom. Create trouble here. Sauron blinked and pushed the knife at his waist up with the scabbard. The huge force crushed his body half a centimeter downward, and his footprints sank into the wooden board. Before he could be surprised, another foot came one after another, kicking him in the chest, knocking him back a few meters, and drawing a shallow mark on the ground. Sanji withdrew his feet, lit the cigarette in his mouth self-consciously, and spit out a mouthful without haste, then looked at Zoro opposite him. You bastard who eats free food, don't know why. See, you just want to beat you up. It seems that this is not an ordinary black shop. Curly-browed Kappa. Zoro stared at the other party without showing any weakness. The fight between the two caused a commotion in the entire restaurant, and Buggy and others who were seated by the window looked back. Buggy leaned on his head with great interest. Oh. I met an acquaintance again. Kya asked. Uncle Buggy, do you know that brutal-looking man? I happened to meet him once, Buggy replied. That is the most outstanding and famous bounty hunter in the East China Sea in recent years, Roronoa Sauron. Mikkel stared at Sauron and interjected, it is said that he is a very dangerous man. It seems that his popularity has spread to the entire East China Sea in the past year. I think there is no shortage of naval campaigns. An outstanding bounty hunter can suppress many xiao. Buggy responded. Kabaji rushed out with his sword in hand, swordsman of the three sword style, I see you again. Zoro, who was being entangled by Sanji, suddenly felt the gust of wind passing by on the left, and hurriedly drew his sword to meet him. Clang. The two long knives collided, and the guests who were closer screamed and dodged backwards. Hey, Sandao Lu, I really remember your hateful face. Kabaji looked gloomy. Really, but I'm just the opposite of you. Soren's mouth drew a sneer, I never have a deep impression on my opponent's opponent. What you say is just as annoying. Kabaji held the handle of the knife and turned, and Sakura Fubuki stuck to the opponent's long knife and quickly stabbed Soren's neck. Sauron raised his left hand, and the iron knife at his waist fell on his hand, blocking the brisk sword. Very good. Stealing my prey. Pirates are indeed an unpleasant existence. Sanji blew a smoke ring, looked at the two in front of him coldly. Hit me out. Kabaji, don't cause trouble to others, go outside. Buggy came over and spread his hands. Kabaji stepped back. Sandao Lu, come out with me, I don't think you will run away. TCH, it's just. I can't use it in such a narrow place. Soren's eyes fell on Buggy. Buggy the clown, it's really lucky that I ran into you again. Yeah, what a headache. Buggy shrugged indifferently. Afterwards, I will accept your head and use it as money for this meal. After speaking, Sauron followed Kabaji's figure and filed out. Buggy said, Sanji, raise the outer fins, don't order me, red nose. Sanji snorted coldly. This is a spectator battle. As the organizer, shouldn't we think of ways to increase popularity and traffic? Sanji didn't listen, and Paddy hurriedly pulled Carl and ran back, whispering, this may make the business a lot more prosperous. Barati's fin is a movable floating platform raised from the bottom, which was built to avoid damaging the internal facilities of the restaurant during the battle. At this time, the sea waves spread out on both sides of the restaurant. Sure enough, there is such an operation. Seeing the rise of the deck with his own eyes, Buggy couldn't help but click twice, and looked at the two swordsmen who were facing each other. The reason why they retreated without a fight against Sauron a year ago was to give the two cadres the motivation to move forward, but after a year of training, their strength is not the same, and now they can directly see the results of their practice. Swordsmen of the three sword style, I admit that you used to have some skills, but it was then, and now is now. I will defeat you with this sword in my hand. Kabaji held Sakura Fubuki's knife handle in his backhand with his right hand. His gloomy eyes were filled with a trace of burning heat. Is that so? The aura on his body seems to be a little different, but I have seen a lot of big talk pirates, and most of them will be honest after being taught a lesson. Soren's 2 knives were held in his hands, and the word Hidao was in his mouth. Kabaji sneered, rushed quickly, and pulled out the hilt of the knife he was holding backwards, and the blade that stabbed Sauron disappeared in an instant. Sauron raised his eyebrows, he advanced instead of retreating, and swung his 2 knives in his hands, slashing over with force, and the word, Hidao, in his mouth stabbed sideways. The swords of the 2 sides staggered, and then they fought together. Kabaji, who was wandering beside Sauron, was extremely fast. He was able to dodge Soren's slash every time, and at the same time counterattack with the sword technique of picking, chopping, and stabbing. Sauron is extremely powerful, but his reaction is not slow, and the 3 handy knives allow him to exert his full strength. The Flower of 6 Thorns. The Sakura Fubuki held by Kabaji suddenly turned into 6 sharp blades that sprang out in one vein, spread out like cherry blossoms that had just bloomed, and pierced the opponent's chest. 3 Sword Style. Ghost Slash. The 3 knives in Soren's hands were like the breath of Asura from hell, and they struck hard head-on. In a daze, the 2 passed by each other, both feet on the ground at the same time, turning around to attack and defend each other. The sound of weapons clashing on the floating platform rang, bang bang bang. The deceit in Kabaji's Shenyan swordsmanship is no longer as effective as the previous ones for Sauron, who has been immersed in the swordsmanship for many years, but it also caused the latter to suffer a lot. On the contrary, Soren's Asura swordsmanship pays attention to rigidity and strength. The power of each blow is incomparably astonishing. With 3 knives in hand, it is like waves advancing layer by layer, one sword after another. It is also very difficult to deal with. However, no one was timid and flinched, and the battle became more intense. It's such a fierce battle with Brother Sauron. Johnny, who woke up Yo-Yo, leaned against the door with Joseph's support, dumbfounded. What kind of strength is this? He is really not Buggy High, the captain of the bandits. Joseph covered Johnny's mouth nervously. Hey! Don't talk nonsense. That swordsman seems to be just a cadre, right? Buggy is there. Buggy looked sideways at the muttering Johnny duo. This is the duo of bounty hunters who wanted to chop off Hawkeye in the original book, but they don't look so arrogant. Well, probably the number 1 swordsman in the world who is far away in the sky and tends to be elusive, and the notoriety of the great pirate in the East China Sea who is close at hand is obviously more frightening. Seeing Buggy looking this way, the 2 quickly turned their heads away and took 2 steps back nervously. The reward of 19.5 million Baileys is no joke. The chefs and guests in the restaurant also watched the exhibition game, which was very enjoyable for them with relish. The speculative Patty moved a dining table near the door, taking advantage of the situation to be the banker. Come on, let's all bet. The one who bets on the green-haired swordsman wins bets on the left, and the one who bets on the one-eyed swordsman wins bets on the right. I pressed that one-eyed one. Sanji put his hands in his trouser pockets rather handsomely, hummed a smoke ring, and placed a stack of Baileys on the right side of the dining table. Paddy touched his head inexplicably. Hey, Sanji, can you see that the one-eyed swordsman is going to win? Of course not. Sanji looked at the battle in front of him. Anyway, that green algae head makes me feel a little uncomfortable. What will happen to have such a superficial hair color? Cold sweat dripped from Paddy's forehead. Is it just because of this? Carl muttered, your curly brows are also strange. You guys. Jepu led Shuma out after hearing the commotion outside, and roared. What are you doing? Hurry up and go to work. Yes, I see, old man. Sanji waved his hands indifferently, and walked towards the kitchen. Paddy, when the results come out, please let me know. I still want to hear about the green algae. News of the defeat. A small boat was gradually approaching on the distant sea, and a woman in a floral shirt was holding a binoculars in her hand to look at Barati's deck. Immediately after putting it on his lap, he took out a booklet with a serious face and read it carefully. That's right, that pirate is holding the previous swordsman, Lieutenant General Grey Katz, who was wearing Sakura Fubuki. With the rumor of the secret country key, he has entered the 21st University of Technology knife. Although it is ranked at the bottom, but such a good sword should not fall into the hands of that kind of pirate. It is a kind of humiliation to the famous sword itself. She was stunned for a while, as if thinking of something. She picked up the binoculars again,
looked around, and began to flip through the brochure. The one in the green-haired man's mouth is the word he Dao in the sharp knife of 21 Gongda. That guy is a bounty hunter. Well, why use famous knives to make money?
Sergeant Dashichi. Facing this knife idiot, the naval officer who was paddling on the side smiled wryly. Forget it. That's the Buggy pirates. We sneaked out originally. If something goes wrong, big news. Colonel Smoker can't explain it. Absolutely not. Dasiki gritted his teeth and said with difficulty, I won't let those famous knives cry again.
2 days ago at the naval garrison base in Rogue Town, when she happened to pass the communication room, she heard a message from the 16th Division. The officer on the other end of the phone blindly exaggerated the danger of the Buggy pirates, and mentioned in detail the strength of the cadres on board and the direction of the pirate ship. After eavesdropping on the news that a member of the Buggy pirates was holding an unknown but in short, peerless knife, she couldn't bear it anymore, and secretly came out with her cronies and subordinates without telling Smoker, all the way east. Okay. Ready to rob the Buggy pirates.
After the voyage for the past few days, she happened to be near Barati. The battle on the Bakudop and the deck in the distance directly attracted her attention. After learning about the situation there, she immediately made up her mind to join the battle. The two swordsmen on the floating platform outside Barati fought 2 moves vigorously, and then dodged back. Very good. Sauron tied the green turban on his arm to his head. I feel like my blood is starting to boil. HMPH. Kabaji snorted coldly. It was just a warm-up before, and next, let you try the sword skills I have honed over the past year. Although it is a bit abrupt in my mouth, your sword skills have indeed reached the realm of entering the room, and I will use the strongest blow to meet you. Zoro placed the double knives staggered on his chest and slowly rotated them. Kabaji closed his eyes, bent his right knee forward, and prepared to exert force. At the moment when it was about to explode, an inappropriate voice came over. Wait for me. You are not allowed to touch the famous knife with your dirty hands. You guys don't deserve to have famous swords at all. A small boat came one after another. Standing on the bow of the boat was a girl with red-rimmed glasses and a tight-fitting vest, with dark blue hair and a black face, shouting loudly.
However, in the duel of swordsmen, they will not be disturbed by external things. Kabaji rushed over, and Zoro also accelerated the speed of rotating the blade, and was about to use the last sword intent to complete the charge blow, but the corner of his eyes inadvertently at a glance, my brain exploded like a thunderbolt, and the movements of my hands involuntarily slowed down. Immediately afterwards, I couldn't concentrate anymore. Luguang Chinzu. Kabaji rushed over in an instant, and the Sakura Quaishui in his hand suddenly turned into hundreds of scattered and orderly snowflakes, exuding a biting coldness, suddenly like an invisible thin blade, and turned into a crippled blade the moment he approached the opponent. The shadow passed through Soren's body, dyeing his entire abdomen bright red.
Sauron knelt down on one knee and suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood, but he didn't feel anything. A woman's face kept appearing in his mind. This face. Why, she is Kuina. No, Kuina has passed away. Who is she? I'm really disappointed. Kabaji sheathed his knife, stood behind Sauron, and turned around with a cold expression. I thought I could fight you uprightly, but it's a pity that I went all out. But you with this annoying attitude. The so-called swordsman duel is really a joke. How come? Zoro coughed up another mouthful of blood. Regardless of Kabaji's taunt and his own injuries, he looked up at Dasiki and shouted loudly. Who the hell are you? Dasiki's originally agitated face suddenly weakened a little. Originally, she was blaming the two, but Soren's anti-customer questioning immediately suppressed her momentum. I'm a sergeant of the Navy headquarters, Dashichi. Dashichi hesitated, but he felt something was wrong when he said it, and suddenly shouted loudly. Dasiki. Sauron exhaled, and after failing to get the answer his subconscious wanted, his consciousness began to collapse. You still haven't taken your eldest brother away. Bucky stood at the door of the restaurant, looking at the bounty hunter duo.
Damn it. Johnny and Joseph reacted hastily, ran forward, forcibly lifted the reluctant Sauron, and sent them to the boat that was coming. Falling means that he is still afraid of the title of the great pirate in the East China Sea.
Damn Bucky pirates, just wait for me, sooner or later, Brother Sauron will recover this debt. I tell you, you can't stay in this part of the East China Sea any longer, and prepare to die when the time comes. 3 sword style. Kabaji didn't stop the two of them, but said with a gloomy face, now it's one-on-one, next time I meet you, I won't hold back. I ran away. Dasiki didn't react to Soren's yell just now, and watched him leave dully. Bucky looked at this girl who came out of nowhere and had immeasurable consequences for this battle, and began to think in his heart, Dashichi. Smog. Nature is very tricky. Eyes rolled. A flash of light suddenly flashed, and a sly smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. I have a bold idea. Haha. What bold idea do you have? Patty, who had collected a lot of money from the dealership, laughed and asked in a very happy mood. It has nothing to do with you. Bucky walked over, his right hand separated instantly, and before Dashiki recovered, he quickly took off the other party's red-rimmed glasses. Dashiki, who lost his glasses, was even more blind than a blind person, looking around helplessly with his hands. My glasses, my glasses. Immediately afterwards, she suffered a heavy blow to the back of her neck, and immediately lost consciousness and fell asleep. The naval officer on the side pulled out his saber in a panic, but was thrown directly on the floating platform by Bucky's dangling hand, and Kabaji cooperated to control him. Bucky was playing with the girl's glasses in one hand, and then crushed them unceremoniously. With the other hand, he carried Dashichi into Baladi. Hey, don't do anything nasty here. Patty was a little embarrassed. He couldn't figure out the temperament of this big pirate. If it damaged the face of the restaurant, it would be bad. Bucky glanced at him sideways. Do you think I'm some kind of perverted chef? Sanji, who came out of the kitchen serving dishes, strode over with a keen sense of smell. You bastard, who are you talking about? As he said that, his eyes fell on Dashiki, and it suddenly turned into a heart shape, and then he picked up Bucky's collar angrily. You bastard. What kind of good did you do to the lovely lady?
Don't get excited. Bucky slapped Sanji's hand that was holding his collar, and said vividly, you should be able to imagine that the handsome Prince Charming rescued the beautiful girl in distress at the hands of the arrogant pirate villain. So the story of a beautiful girl falling in love with Prince Charming at first sight and living happily together.
Sanji was taken aback. Hey, what do you mean? How about it? Do you want to be that Prince Charming? There seems to be a strange magic in what Bucky said. It sounds a little obedient, like a wicked witch who encourages others to eat poisoned apples. At least Sanji fell into this magic. The story of falling in love with a beautiful lady is really wonderful. Well, no. How could I do such an ungentlemanly thing to a lady? But this is a great opportunity. No, you can't violate the way of a gentleman. In Sanji's mind, there seemed to be two villains, an angel and a demon, fighting non-stop. It's easy to be a caring gentleman, but it may take a lifetime to become a hero in a girl's heart. Bucky's solemn words successfully gave the demon in Sanji's mind the power to make a final decision, and defeated the angel with one punch. I see. Sanji whispered guiltily. Take her in and have a rest. Remember, don't disturb her. She needs a quiet environment. In the evening, Barati's lights are like the bright moon on the sea, exuding a deep atmosphere. After being beaten by Jeppu in the past 2 days, Shuma's mental outlook seems to have grown a lot, and he has the feeling of a chef. Horse repair boy. Jeppu stroked down his 2 braided beards, and when he let go, the beard bounced up like a spring. Would you like to stay and work with me, and I will teach you some novel ways? You're trying to cheat, Jeppu. Bucky changed his previous attitude of asking for help, and said boldly, in this case, replace your curly eyebrows with me. Exactly, I wanted to drive him away a long time ago, you can take it if you want. Jeppu raised his eyebrows. Stinky old man. What are you talking about? Sanji said angrily, I will stay here until you die. HMPH, brat, if you want to become a pirate, I won't stop you. Dream. Shu Ma interrupted the atmosphere of the two charging, and said with some reluctance, Uncle Bearded Braid, then I'm leaving. Let's go. Jeppu looked at Shuma. I can't count on this brat, but you are different, you are still young, and there is still a long time to go to find the legendary sea area, and my dream it will be delivered to you together. After finishing speaking, he threw the bag in his hand to Bucky. I'm not down to the point of letting you, a red nose, help me. It's my initiative to teach him the skills of Shuma Kid, and I will return the money to you. Bucky took the bag with 100 million Baileys in it, handed it to Mochi, laughed twice, it's really hard talking. Let's go. Flicking the captain's cloak, leaving behind a gorgeous back, he led everyone onto the boat. Harness anchor, set sail, target, Rogue Town. Looking at the pirate ship going away, Sanji lit a cigarette and blew out a smoke ring. Smelly old man, I won't leave, I will stay here forever, and then fall in love with a beautiful lady. As he spoke, he twisted his body and immersed himself in the beautiful reverie, and said intoxicatedly, then, the crystallization of our beautiful love will be born. Wait until the time comes to hold a grandson, old man. Jeppu, who originally planned to blame Sanji for bringing a strange woman into the room, turned into a humming twice when the words came to his lips. A smile appeared in the corner of his eyes, and he tried to keep a straight face and said, "Then you bastard, you have to work harder. If you don't make a big fat boy next year, you pack up and get out of here."
Cut. Sanji was intoxicated in the beautiful fantasy again, closed his eyes, walked briskly towards the kitchen, and murmured in a low voice, "Hurry up and prepare desserts that are not too greasy, refreshing lemon tea, warm wet wipes. That beautiful young lady will definitely feel my full love when she wakes up."
On the Bakudop, the naval officers accompanying Dashichi were tied to the ship railing on the deck. Their mouths were stretched with tape, and they could not speak.
Baki said nearby. "The chefs in Balatiri are still the same. They like to use human flesh to cook, especially to feed the ingredients first, and wait 10 days and a half months before using them to make various dishes." Quote.
Captain Baki, after all, they are our immediate superiors, so we can't criticize them. Kabaji persuaded from the side. "I know. The curly-browed boss in the restaurant has a special preference for women. If that lady falls into his hands, I'm afraid she will be sliced into pieces after a while." As he spoke, Bucky sighed, full of regret. The naval officer's struggle became louder, trying to break free from the thick rope that bound him. Bucky patted the officer's cheek, and said solemnly, "No, you can't destroy the place called the Sea Restaurant, Bilati. Although this restaurant is very famous in the East China Sea, but don't go around nonsense that it is the base camp of the Bucky pirates." The naval officer struggled for a long time, to no avail. Kabaji knocked him on the back of the neck and passed out. Kabaji asked, "Captain Bucky, is this okay?" A cunning arc was drawn at the corner of Bucky's mouth. "All right, you will watch him these few days. Come and drink the strong tea I just made." Shuma came out to greet the two wearing an apron that seemed strangely taken out from Bharati. They all sit in the Kia ingredients. "Well, I'll be here soon." Bucky looked at the naval officer, found out a few more hemp ropes, tightened them tightly, and said to Kabaji, "Let's take a rest first, just right. I still have some things to do I have to explain." The two walked into the restaurant, and there were several cups of fragrant matcha on the table, and the freshly warmed pumpkin pie and toast were placed in the middle. Kia, Mikkel, and Mochi were all sitting there, either dozing off or flipping through books. Bucky sat on the chair and coughed twice. "Okay, after so many days, everyone is familiar with it." Everyone nodded, and even the newcomer Mikkel slowly adapted to the rhythm of this ship. He occasionally ate delicious dried fish and basked comfortably on the deck. The pirates on this pirate ship fell down. Not so bad.
Next, we are going to the last stop in the East China Sea, Kaya. I will give you one night to consider seeing this sea as a free pirate, or choose to leave this ship in Rogue Town. The original gentleman's agreement is still valid. Don't rush to answer. Give me the answer tomorrow."
Bucky looked at Kaya and said. The latter closed the medical book and nodded extremely seriously. "I see, Uncle Bucky, I will think about it carefully." Then, Bucky looked at Mikkel. "Little kitty, after arriving in Rogue Town, I still need to ask you to do some small things. Don't worry, I will give you a reward of braised soury after it is done, but if it goes wrong, there is nothing left."
Braised soury and braised soury. Mikul's eyes lit up. His face was completely sleepless, and he suddenly said soberly, "You can't play tricks, otherwise, or I will let this ship go to a place with hidden reefs, and the ship will be destroyed." Bucky's face is full of black lines. What this stupid cat is saying is too much. Ahem. After coughing twice, Bucky looked at Shuma, who was busy. "Shuma, do you have any attractive spices?" "Spice?" Shuma stopped what he was doing, touched his head, and then took out a box of jars from the cupboard. "This is the fragrance of drunken wine. You will get drunk after smelling it. It's the man with the braided beard specially for me." Bucky took the glass jar, took a little out of it, put it under his nose and sniffed it. There is a strange but not pungent, and very refreshing fragrance. After smelling it for a long time, you will indeed feel drunk. Bucky put back the lid of the box, looked at Mochi and Kabaji again, and explained to them what to do next. Afterwards, everyone chatted and rested for a while, and then dispersed. There is a hint of paleness in the east, and it is another new day. How much longer? Bucky looked at Mikkel, who was lying on the deck lazily. Mikkel yawned and stretched. "It's almost there, about an hour." During the 2-day voyage, Kaya finally gave a firm answer that she would follow the ship until the moment her dream was fulfilled, and the ship was finally approaching the gateway to the East China Sea, Rogue Town. In the town of the beginning and the end, in his memory, Bucky came here once. It was nearly 20 years ago. He watched Roger being tortured on the scaffold with his own eyes. It can no longer be killed by ordinary 2 Marines. At that time, he was crying bitterly, immersed in pain and unable to extricate himself, but as time passed, this sincere feeling gradually faded and was buried in the bottom of his heart. It was probably the first time in Bucky's life that he expressed his feelings from the bottom of his heart. Crying. After that, never again.
Thinking of the place he was about to arrive at, Bucky couldn't help but feel a lot of heat in his heart. He clutched his heart. It was a strange feeling. It should be caused by the instinctive power of his body. Looking into the distance, only to see the small islands like ants, Huma has already shouted, "Bucky, I saw it, I saw it." Bucky waved his right hand, reefing the sails. Kabaji and Mokili quickly put away the pirate sail flag, and the Bakudop followed the sea waves and approached Rog Town. The speed was not fast, but it was very concealed. The East China Sea has always been the weakest sea area on the surface, and the naval forces in Rog Town, which guards the gate, are actually not many, although Bai Hunter alone is equivalent to thousands of troops. It was only a little closer to the Kudup, so Bucky asked Huma to step on the moon to visit which part of the coast was sparsely populated, so as to avoid attracting the attention of the Navy. After that, it finally arrived at the shore and docked outside a desolate and uninhabited beach. Mochi will guard the ship, and Baki will distribute Baileys to Kia and Shuma. Under the instructions of Ji, he began to collect the location and information of Rog Town.
Afterwards, Bucky planned to put the handyman pirates and the square-faced navigator here, and pay some pensions. Even if they were reluctant, he made up his mind. Even Bucky himself doesn't think that everything can be predicted and avoided. Without the means of survival, these weak guys will always be the first to be targeted and then killed.
Similarly, they are not high-profile pirates. As long as they change their appearance, they can survive in this weakest sea area without worrying about being attacked by bounty hunters. Although he integrates the cunning and cruelty of Bucky's character, his own personality is the dominant position. He has more or less feelings for these hard-working pirates. It's not deep, but he can see it. This is the first time for Kaya to come to such a big town. The towering and unique buildings, the huge fountain square, and the wide streets are completely big towns that cannot be compared with Zailuobu village. Crowds of people walked along the road, talking and laughing. There were a variety of shops everywhere, and there were so many forked intersections and secluded alleys that people were dizzy. However, for Kia, who experienced the incident in Koko Yaxi village, her cowardice has gradually faded away, and under the passive effect of the devil fruit, her body is constantly recovering and strengthening every day. These changes have gradually enabled her to do things independently. That store is a medicine store. Looking at the shop with the name, Old Granny Medicine, Kaya walked over with joy on her face. "Hi, is there anyone here?" Kaya pushed open the door. The inside was a little dark, and there was no reply in silence. As far as the eye can see, the dilapidated wooden tables and chairs, the medicine counter covered with cobwebs, and the flickering candles that are about to be extinguished. "Excuse me, is anyone there?" Kaya called again politely. "Excuse me, is anyone there?" The repeated words startled Kia, and only then did she realize that it was her own echo in the sealed room. "It doesn't look like there will be people living here. I'd better find another pharmacy." She let out a sigh of relief, turned and left. "This door." He pushed the door open with his hands, but the door seemed to be fixed to the space, not moving at all. "What's going on?" Kaya's heart suddenly jumped. She remembered that there were ghosts and ghosts in the stories told by Usopp, such as hungry ghosts who were not able to get enough food and clothing in their lifetime. Another example is that the executed criminals turned into evil spirits, killing innocent people everywhere in order to vent their anger. And this store looks like no one has lived in it for decades. Could it be that the owner sold some outrageous medicinal materials, which killed others, and finally paid for his life, and turned into an earthbound spirit wandering here after death? Boom. There was a sudden hard touch on her feet, and Kia yelled in fright, and instinctively looked down, only to see the thing in the dim candlelight. She wiped the cold sweat from her forehead, and patted her chest in shock. It turned out to be the jar at the door. At the same time as her eyes moved down, the faint candlelight in the room suddenly went out, and then, a white figure flashed past.
Kaya glanced casually out of the corner of her eye, and quickly turned around to look, but there was nothing in front of her eyes. The surroundings were pitch black like a curtain of darkness hanging in front of her eyes, and the whole room revealed a weird and absurd atmosphere. Drip drip. I don't know which direction the voice came from. It rang without warning, and it was in sync with the beat of the heartbeat in a few blinks of an eye. What the hell is this place? Kaya's heart was pounding. She didn't dare to stay for a while. She squeezed the doorknob tightly with both hands, and pushed it out. But for some reason,
There was a gleam of light from under the crack of the door, but the door couldn't be opened at all. Hey! A hoarse and gloomy voice came from behind. This voice gave Kia the illusion that firecrackers were exploding from the spine to the top of the head in a strange environment. The time around seemed to slow down a lot. She turned her head away bit by bit, her pupils suddenly dilated, and she couldn't see anyone in front of her eyes. Little girl, don't try too hard, the hinge is broken.
A tube of light suddenly came on from below. Kaya took a deep breath and did not dare to exhale. She looked down slowly. She was a very short old woman wrapped in a white quilt. She was holding a candle in her hand, and her wrinkled face was covered with a scar. Slightly hideous scars.
Kaya's feet went limp, and she almost sat on the ground. Out appeared the earthbinding spirit. What stupid things are you talking about, Grandma? I'm human, said the old woman, slightly annoyed. Hey, so it's not a ghost? Listening to the old woman's words, Kaya finally realized that although she was a little small and had a scar on her face, there shouldn't be a ghost wearing a quilt.
The old woman looked at Kaya, young girl with big breasts and upturned buttocks. Don't think that you can speak freely because you are young and beautiful. Grandma tells you, when you reach my age, you will also look like this. No matter how glamorous, there will always be wrinkles on the face in the end, and only life experience can accompany you for a lifetime.
Yes, I'm sorry. Kia felt a little guilty about the other party's criticism, and bowed her head. It's really rude.
HMPH, you are here to buy medicinal materials. The old woman walked slowly inside with a quilt wrapped in a quilt, carrying an oil lamp. Since that white hunter came, there have been very few pirates who have landed and plundered. The medicine can't be sold, the business is not very prosperous, the door hinge is broken, the pendulum clock stops and goes, and it's not very good. Grandma, I'm getting old, I can't stand the cold, I'm going to die.
Why, you are still very young. Kia said with a guilty conscience. Under the influence of Buggy, she finally learned to be inconsistent, and the simple Kia is no longer there. HMPH, what nonsense, I'm 120 years old this year. Kaya was stunned. You are 120 years old? You can't tell at all.
The old woman sat on the bench next to the counter, and put the oil lamp on the counter. I'm afraid to scare you, little girl. Grandma was a pirate when she was young. Even the pirate king Galdi Roger. In front of me they are all brats, although this brat has done something earth-shattering.
I really didn't expect you to have such an experience. Kaya's eyes widened in surprise. She never expected that the old woman in front of her, who couldn't even walk very well, had such an unknown past. She really didn't show her face. The old woman didn't reveal any more. Those cabinets are full of medicines, you go and look through them yourself. How much you buy, how much you take, after clearing up, put the money on the table.
Yes. Kaya nodded quickly, and under the light of the oil lamp, she rummaged through the medicines and medicinal materials according to the note pasted outside the cabinet.
When searching, chat very politely. I never thought that a person could live so long.
Grandma also wants to die quickly, but a bunch of unsatisfied bastards won't let me go. In fact, people live not in the length of their lives, but in the joys and sorrows accumulated day by day. These will be like staggered syllables or filled into the movement written with a lifetime spectrum. This kind of life is the most wonderful.
It's so profound. The old lady is indeed a very powerful person. What you said was exactly the same as those bastards who are looking for trouble. Oh. Kaya took out a reddish herb from the medicine cabinet, with roots in the middle and small round leaves scattered on both sides. Grandma, this herb is. The old woman was lying on the bench, her closed eyes slightly revealing a slit, and said unhurriedly, that's Alpiro Sergora. Kaya asked. Alpiro Silgola. I remember it seems to be called fanatic grass.
That's the abbreviation. This herb is indeed a kind of herb that brings people excitement and fanaticism. It grows in a warm and humid environment and can increase the strength of the human body for a short time, but it will also cause serious consequences. It is said that Fishman Island there is a pill called S, which is adulterated with this drug.
The old woman paused for a moment, then said grimly, if you don't want to die, then don't touch it, it's not a good thing. I see. Kia put it back awkwardly, and continued to look for necessary medicinal materials and some medicines that had been mixed. Squeak. The hinge of the door, which was not very useful, was opened, and the light shone in from the outside, and a group of people entered in single file. In the center is a man with a grass-green coxcomb head, with a black wing-shaped half-ring tattoo on his chest, wearing a purple coat with a skull pattern on the back and plaid trousers, striding in. It looked malicious, but in the next moment, Those fierce eyes suddenly shone like a quiet rabbit. Grandma. Little Barto, you're here. The old woman lay flat on the chair with a calm expression. Hurry up and apply the mud on me. It will take a few more treatments to remove the scars on my face. My newly rejuvenated face cannot be ruined like this. Grandma, you are only 120 years old this year, but this is the second spring of your life. Bartolomeo took out a pair of green clay from the cabinet with familiarity, and slapped the old woman's face bit by bit. The black street boss who was in charge of Baishaji Street in Rogtown looked like a well-behaved lamb, obeying the old woman's orders. You bastard, Grandma, my life is just getting started. The old woman laughed wantonly. She didn't look decadent waiting to die at all.
Hey. Kia looked at the scene in front of her in astonishment, and rubbed her eyes. Why was there a circle of vigor around the old woman, as if she had changed? She suddenly remembered something, and blurted out, I know, yes, he was brought back from a dead body.
What nonsense are you talking about? The old woman glared at Kia angrily with a dark face. There is still a lot of beauty in my life. Bartolomeo discovered Kia at this time, and asked the old woman, Grandma, is this the new apprentice?
No, it's a guest. The old woman said calmly, by the way, little Barto, I still want to tell you about that kid Roger. At that time, I happened to be in front of the execution platform, and the whole square was full of people. They all looked at Roger on the execution platform. He said a word at the last moment. Do you know what it is?
Without waiting for Bartolomeo to reply, the old woman continued. He said, do you want my treasure? If you want it, go find it. I put everything there. Even if I think of that sentence now, I can't help but feel my blood boil, and I have an urge to go to sea. Yes, Grandma, you have said it countless times, but I don't believe that someone can say this sentence so calmly before the execution. You stubborn bastard. The old woman took out a stick in her short hand and slapped Bartolomeo's head vigorously. You don't believe my life experience, Grandma. It hurts. Grandma tells you that most people are selfish, greedy, and afraid of death. The old woman's face suddenly became serious.
But not everyone is carved out of the same mold. There are all kinds of human beings in this world. There are good and evil. Some people kill their wives and children for gold, silver and treasure, and some people will give up their lives for their dreams. When you are about to die, you can also laugh out loud. This is my life experience that I have seen in my walk for many years. You must keep it in mind.
That. Kaya asked in a low voice, I have bought the medicinal materials here, can I pay for it? The old woman glanced briefly at the medicinal materials, and pointed to a cabinet. There are bags for storage, put down, and you can go. Kaya didn't delay any longer, collected the medicinal materials, carefully walked around several burly men at the door, and walked out. Before leaving, I could still hear the green coxcomb asking, Grandma, I did a stupid thing recently.
Kaya and Shuma returned to the ship very early, and several pirates were scattered in all directions of Rog Town. At night, they brought back the full map and information of various locations in Rog Town. Of course, this was paid for at Bailey's expense. Rog Town's administration and military are separate, and there are personnel and troops responsible for administrative management, collecting taxes, cleaning up the city, and managing citizens and other trivial matters. Only when the administrative system cannot maintain the situation, the Navy will be dispatched. This kind of situation is usually a large-scale riot and the elimination of pirates. Therefore, the Black Street gangs composed of local personnel in Rog Town will not be suppressed by the Navy, and the administrative agency will turn a blind eye. Now, the scale is so large that it can lead the underground forces of Beishi Street. From the point of view, it even exceeds the strength of the Navy.
And the leader of the faction is the local Bartolomeo, a guy who does things crazy and no one dares to offend. He is not bragging. If he says that he can make an ordinary person unable to stay in Rog Town, he is basically appointed by the imperial court. The man's death. Buggy studied the whole map of Rog Town brought by the pirates all night, and after planning the route in detail, he handed over the task. The air in the morning is still relatively humid, probably because it is very close to the Red Earth continent. When the sun first shines and the thin sea fog has not dissipated, you can occasionally see the mirage of the Red Mountain close at hand. As the highest officer of Rog Town Naval Base, Smoker, no one can order him. Even if he is idle in the naval base every day, no one will criticize him, but he always insists on walking along the several streets of Rog Town every day. Patrol in a circle with a fixed route to prevent Xiao Xiao waiting for an opportunity to enter. Although the route is not fixed, there will be a place that must pass through, the central square of Rog Town.
Here is the execution platform where Roger was executed. Every year, many tourists come to watch and see some of the elegant demeanor left by One Piece. Therefore, there are many people and eyes. Compared with other streets, it is more complicated and makes people more considerable attention.
Behind him is a naval sergeant who has been trained for several years. He carries a phone bug with him, and he can report any suspicious news immediately. At this time, Smoker was holding 2 cigars in his mouth, his face was filled with smoke, and with the breeze blowing, the cheeks covered by the smoke were slowly revealed, but it was a frowning face.
A few days ago, Colonel Mouse of the 77th Division of the Navy and Brigadier General Brin simultaneously sent a message to all East China Sea branches and headquarters. The errant pirate group with the highest bounty in the East China Sea has been lurking for a long time. The Buggy pirates, which had only emerged in recent days, were defeated. 3 or 2 big cats and kittens in the East China Sea. Smoker has never paid attention to him. Even the Murloc Aaron from the Great Root is nothing in his eyes. The reason why he didn't do anything about it is because the relationship at the Chihuahua level and that sea area are beyond their jurisdiction. However, this Buggy pirates is different. This is the East China Sea pirates who were born and found. They have been active in this sea area for 10 years, but now they suddenly overthrew the Aaron pirates for no reason. People feel a little strange and at the same time a little uneasy, as if 2 separated and built building blocks suddenly collide.
Having been in the East China Sea for so many years, Smoker naturally knows that the power of the pirates in the East China Sea is actually divided.
For example, the territory under the jurisdiction of the 16th Division of the Navy is occupied by Aaron, and the center of the East China Sea is owned by Admiral Creek. The site, the original Southern Sea area, was managed by the Black Cat pirates. Several well-known pirates basically tacitly avoided colliding with each other to avoid unreasonable consumption of strength.
But what is the purpose of the Buggy pirates actually provoking the Aaron pirates? Smoker puffed out 2 puffs of cigarettes in confusion. He always felt that it would not be peaceful recently, so not only did he strengthen his patrols, but his naval soldiers were also instructed to be much more diligent than usual. Walking through the central square of Rogtown, a man with a green coxcomb hair and a nose ring, the boss of the Black Street, Bartolomeo, came to him. Smoker selectively turned a blind eye and calmly passed each other. For a moment, Bartolomeo patted Smoker on the shoulder provocatively, and then continued to walk forward. Colonel Smoker. The accompanying non-commissioned officer quickly reacted and grabbed Bartolomeo's clothes angrily. Hey, what good thing have you done? Stop. Oh. Ha ha ha. Bartolomeo laughed exaggeratedly, and said provocatively, what's the matter? Do naval officers want to use their private power to abuse ordinary civilians by lynching? You are no ordinary civilian, the accompanying sergeant retorted. Smoker stopped in his tracks, looked at a black handprint on his shoulder, and exhaled more smoke from his mouth. It's okay. Let's go. Yes. The accompanying sergeant responded with difficulty, and let go of Bartolomeo's clothes resentfully. This gangster with perverse behavior is really a big thorn in Rogtown. Haha, the Navy still has guts. Bartolomeo laughed and walked away.
Smoker is not a person who doesn't know how to be flexible. He knows the identity of the other party, but if the other party has not done anything out of line or caused a threat, he will not provoke the other party, otherwise it will cause the entire the riots on Beishidiao Street in the town, especially in this extraordinary period.
Where's Dashichi? Smoker asked suddenly. Sergeant Dasiki said that he asked you to leave for a few days because of something. The accompanying sergeant replied after a moment of silence. This guy. Smoker didn't say much, but the smoke on his face was much thicker, and Dasiki's request for leave was not approved by him at all, not even a notification.
What the hell are you doing? Doubts welled up in Smoker's heart. Dasichi is a character who can't hide things. If it's just an ordinary thing, he will definitely ask for leave honestly, and he won't sneak out. I'm afraid there is something that must be done and it is more dangerous, that's why I kept it from myself and sneaked out.
What a messy woman. Thinking of this level, Smoke started to feel a little headache. It is so difficult to find someone in such a big place as the East China Sea.
He had a headache, and the cigar in his mouth became more intense, probably because of the side effects of the devil fruit. He had a subtle sense of dependence on the cigar, and if he didn't hold one in his mouth, he would feel uncomfortable in his heart, so he felt uncomfortable. Most of the wages that come down are used to buy cigars.
He smoked very quickly at this time, and in the blink of an eye, the 2 cigars were finished. He took off the end of the cigarette, took a long breath, and suddenly his nose fluttered, and he turned around and asked, "Do you smell anything?" Hearing Smoker's sudden serious words, The sergeant said nervously. I didn't smell it. N. Smoker replied indifferently, and walked towards the direction where the smell of cigars came from. The cigar itself does not have such a strong fragrance, not only does not know why, but this smell has spread far and far, which is particularly attractive to him. After walking for a short distance, there was a guy in a cloak standing against the wall next to the street, holding a box of cigars in his hand as if he was about to sell them. Smoker strode up, staring at the cigar in the opponent's hand with a pair of dead fish eyes. Your box of cigars. As he said that, he looked at the other party twice more curiously. It was not a human being, it should be a fur tribe on the Great Route.
The man in the cloak reacted immediately, and opened the transparent box in his hand, exuding a light cigar aroma. Guest, you really have discernment. This is a special product of the Great Route, the cat wine roll cigar, which uses winter snow and summer snow respectively. It is made from tobacco. Do you want to have one?
Smoker took out a cigar and sniffed it under his nose. The smell was different from the one he had smoked before, like wine. Seeing Smoker's heart fluttering, the man in the cloak persuaded, this cigar is cheap, you can try it first. Hearing what the other party said, Smoker unceremoniously picked up the cigar and put it in his mouth, lit the fire himself, and immediately swallowed the smoke. Seeing that Smoker had smoked it, the man in the cloak said, Guest, 100,000 berry for a cigarette, can you pay first? Smoker frowned, and the accompanying non-commissioned officer was about to step forward and grabbed the opponent's cloak. 100,000 Bailey. You are a traitor who dares to blackmail even the colonel. Are you looking for death? The man in the cloak has already retreated lightly to prevent the other party from touching him. Is the colonel bullying us ordinary people? Then how much do you want to pay? 3 times the market price of ordinary cigars. Smoker was not angry, and was about to take out the Bailey, when suddenly a dampness poured down on his head. His whole body became wet and thick, and there was an extremely smelly smell. Smell. It stinks. The man in the cloak held his nose. Forget it, I don't want your money. After finishing speaking, he fled away in a hurry.
I'm really sorry. A half figure was exposed at the upper window, touching his head and said guiltily, I didn't notice that there was someone below, and accidentally poured the washing water down.
Smoker looked up and stared for a long time, always feeling that the person looked familiar, and said slowly, be careful next time. Yes, yes, yes. The figure beside the window responded repeatedly and closed the window. Colonel. Is that really the way to go? The non-commissioned officer on the side also dipped in some laundry water, and immediately felt uncomfortable. The laundry water not only stinks, but also smells like swill. Smoker didn't answer. The uncomfortable smell on his body made him lose the mood to smoke a cigar. I don't know if it was a coincidence. When he turned his head and looked, there happened to be a public bath next to him. Go take a shower first. In the closed window, Buggy stood up, glanced at the resident who was tied up in the corner and had a bandaged mouth, and said to Shuma, the performance was good just now, you should go back to the boat first. After finishing speaking, he picked up the phone and dialed, Kabaji, it's almost done, proceed as planned. After that, he hung up the phone bug, walked out of the room, and walked to the opposite bathroom. Drunk and humid cigars evaporate under the sun, and the fragrance will naturally spread out, leading Smoker to a location not far from the central square where he must pass. At the same time, the location of temptation must be near the bathing place. When the peddler's mickle distracted the opponent, he poured foul-smelling dirty water. Shuma's reward list portrait was painted, but Mickle didn't offer a reward, so it would be reassuring for them to do it, and the plan has been very smooth so far. With an all-white mask covering his face and a cloak, Buggy walked into the bath. It was only morning, and there were not many customers. Buggy put down a stack of Baileys in front of the counter, and under the strange and suspicious eyes of the owner of the bathhouse, he picked up the passing number on the counter, and walked to the room where the clothes were placed. But as soon as he walked into the room and closed the door, Buggy grabbed the attendant in the room, stabbed his finger on the neck of the other party, and said very threateningly, which storage box was used by the Navy just now? Don't talk nonsense, otherwise I will really kill you. The attendant gasped for breath, and pointed at box with trembling fingers. Buggy grabbed the opponent, walked to the box, and opened the box with brute force. Found it. Smoker's clothes and his weapon, 10 hands. He picked up 10 hands and looked carefully. The handle was wrapped with a red cloth strip. On it was a thin stick made of refined iron, about 1 meter long, with a 90-degree hook extending from the right side. This weapon itself has nothing conspicuous, but it has one of its biggest features, the top is inlaid with sea stones. It's still handy. Buggy put it in his hand and waved it twice. It is so difficult to obtain controlled items such as Hylu stone when he has no power, and it is also difficult to cut it into a weapon. It takes a lot of effort. Since there is a ready-made one, Buggy will certainly not miss it. His plan is for this weapon. He hasn't learned domineering yet, but with this weapon, he can strengthen his damage to devil fruit users, even if he encounters nature. The system will not be without the power to fight back. What do you want to do with my clothes? Smoker pushed open the door of the changing room naked, with 2 cigars in his mouth. What a rough figure. Buggy glanced twice, took Smoker's clothes in his hands, and smiled slyly. It's nothing, just have some fun. HMPH. Smoker snorted coldly, and his arms turned into thick white smoke and rushed towards him, white fist. Good time. Buggy held 10 hands in his hand and waved them in front of his eyes. After touching 10 hands, all the white mist scattered in the air and couldn't condense. Halushi worked. It's my turn. Bucky's eyes showed a sly look, and he rushed in front of the astonished Smoker, with the tops of his hands resting on the opponent's body. The white mist on Smoker's body suddenly turned into a solid body, and an indescribable sense of powerlessness spread all over his body, and then he punched him in the face, blasting him into the pool in the bathing place. Whoa! The hot and humid hot spring splashed countless water splashes. The effect is outstanding. Buggy played a flower with 10 hands in the air, and put his back behind his back. Let's take a step first, and I won't play with you anymore. You can't escape. Smoker popped his head out of the pool, wiped the wound on his cheek, and chased out quickly. It was the first time he had been teased like this in Rogtown for so long. Although he didn't know the identity of the other party, but when I think of the Baki pirates who have made a fuss recently, I am somewhat sure of the other party's identity. Colonel. The accompanying non-commissioned officer shouted hastily. Only then did Smoker stop in his tracks. Although he himself was careless, if he chased him out naked, his photo would be taken by a newspaper on the street, published in the newspaper, and spread to the ears of those bastards in the headquarters. Great. The guy wearing the mask should have taken his clothes and pants away on purpose. He quickly searched for a fitting bathrobe in the room, and at the same time gave instructions to the sergeant. Notice, all the soldiers must gather urgently to investigate all suspicious persons in the town, and send people to patrol the surrounding ports. If you find a pirate ship, destroy it immediately. When Buggy seized the weapon, Kabaji on the other side had already been in action. The Black Street in Rogtown is located in the southwest corner, where a large number of idlers, hooligans, and rascals gather in Rogtown, forming the largest underground gang in Rogtown. In the corner of the shadow flashed a figure wearing glasses and short hair, wearing red lipstick, wearing a sexy female attire, holding a long knife in his hand. Looking at the man who was chopped up in front of him, the humble bastard shouted shrilly. Listen well. I'm Dasiki, a sergeant in the Navy headquarters. If you do anything wrong again in the future, the Navy will put you all in jail. After putting down his harsh words, he quickly disappeared from everyone's sight, and got into a corner where no one was around. This person is Kabaji. He quickly changed back his clothes, wiped the red lipstick on his lips, and heaved a long sigh of relief. If Mochi sees my appearance just now, it will be the end of me. Being discovered by suspicious people. Why did Captain Buggy choose me to do this kind of thing? When Barolomeo returned to Black Street leisurely, the anger in his eyes could no longer be contained. Which bastard did such a good thing, dare to bully my brother? In the alley, a gangster pretending to be dead heard a familiar voice, got up quickly and ran over, and said with tears streaming down his face, Boss Bardo, you have to decide for our group of brothers. What is the problem? It's Sergeant Dasiki from the naval base. She came here single-handedly. None of our gang of bastard brothers are her opponents. The brothers died and were injured, although no one died. Dashichi. Bartolomeo gritted his teeth. I have indeed heard that there is such a number one person in the Navy. Yes. The gangster quickly handed over a photo he took while taking the opportunity. It's this Navy. Bartolomeo took it. When this photo was taken, the man had already turned around halfway, and he could only see the spectacle frames by his ears, short hair, and the fine stubble on the edges of his cheeks. A long knife, wearing a knee-length skirt on the body, with the hair on one leg exposed. The figure looks a bit strong, not like a woman's slender waist. This guy. Bartolomeo clenched his fists, and the figure on the photo and a figure in his mind that he seemed to have seen and who he didn't seem to see slowly overlapped, and blurted out, as expected, she is Darth Chi. The bastards lying on the ground woke up one after another, and after hearing what the boss said, they expressed their opinions one after another. Damn, how can there be such a pervert in women's clothing? I didn't expect her to be Dasiki. I've always heard that Dashiki is the #1 beauty in the Navy in Rogtown. That's not the case at all. Navy is really a group of hypocritical guys. He is obviously such a perverted guy, but he actually said that he is a beautiful woman. It really hurts my eyes. Quiet me. Bartolomeo's demeanor as the gang leader was immediately revealed at this time. After saying this, everyone shut up. He gritted his teeth. If it's just a little bit of revenge just now, then the Navy is not a good thing. We don't have to be polite to them. Tell all the brothers, take up arms, rush into the naval base. We will let them know who is the real overlord of Rogtown. Oh. The gangsters around roared in agreement. A group of people rushed out in a mighty manner, and the pedestrians around the street avoided it. Smoker was running on the street, looking for Bucky. The crowd around stopped, looked at this strange man with surprised eyes and disgust. Hey, isn't this Chief Smoker? Sir Smoker is dressed so strangely. A few passing girls quickly covered their eyes, watching shyly through the gap between their fingers. That man is such a rascal. He is obviously a handsome uncle. Why is he wearing this kind of clothes? Although Smoker usually has a rough style and doesn't pay too much attention to his clothes, but at this time his face can't help showing a blush, and the embarrassment in his heart can't be added. Just now, he casually found a well-fitting bathrobe to wrap around his body, and hurriedly chased it out, only to find that he was wearing a pink bathrobe with a love heart painted on it, with sexy lace on the cuffs and collar lace. Imagine an uncle with white hair and wrinkled eyes, wearing a cute bathrobe with a V-shaped angle at the neckline, with a cigar in his mouth, running around the street. Smoker is his own imagination in this situation. There is an urge to want to die. However, things have come to this point, and they can only grit their teeth secretly, vowing in their hearts that once the masked bastard in front of him is caught, he must be imprisoned in Imperton. It's really clingy. Bucky was about to run away, but Smoker's white smoke turned into elements was not slow and was about to catch up again. Bucky's purpose was just this weapon, and he didn't really intend to fight against Smoker. First, he wanted to kill Smoker completely. Unnecessary disputes. Secondly, Smoker is a student of Zepha and has many contacts in the Navy headquarters. If he is really killed, he will not be chased to death by the Navy once he reaches the Great Route. This deal is too bad. Therefore, he only needs to create some chaos, such as causing a conflict between Rogtown's apparent and hidden forces. Bucky was running ahead, secretly seeing a group of naval soldiers from Rogtown in the distance already in action, holding a large caliber gun barrel in his hand. As expected, it should be filled with prison bullets. Prison bombs are shells specially used to capture devil fruit capable users. When fired, an iron net will be opened. This kind of iron net contains some Hylu stones, but most of the Hylu stones used to make prison bullets are leftovers after being used for other purposes, and then added to the iron net after grinding. Although it is only some of the surface layer, it can also be used. Smoker should have brought it from the Navy headquarters to make devil fruit users lose their strength and abilities. The action is really fast. With the naval soldiers blocking the front and Smoker chasing after him, Bucky turned around and was about to run to the side. He suddenly slowed down, and saw a group of black and riotous crowds emerging from both sides. In the blink of an eye, this group of people rushed out, led by Bartolomeo, staring at Smoker who was wearing a pink bathrobe in front of him with wide eyes. You guy, you really are a perverted uncle. Sure enough, seeing is believing. Smoker, who has always been a positive image in Luojtown, has such a quirk. With such a boss, the short-haired swordsman Dashiki with a sword on his waist just now must be right up. Bartolomeo picked his nostrils, and flicked the booger to Smoker. You are indeed a terrible transvestite just like that Dashichi. The gangsters brought behind him couldn't help laughing while clutching their stomachs, or shouted hysterically. My God, the captain of the Navy is a transvestite. Big news, the high-sounding chief of the Navy actually has an unknown side. As he said it, he had the idea of smearing Smoker in his heart, in order to repay the account that was charged to the Navy just now. Pedestrians hid in corners out of fear. All the windows of houses on the side of the street were closed, and a few troublemakers flashed their shutters, ready to sell the shocking news to newspapers. Baki was also a little confused. It was indeed his idea to ask Kabaji to pretend to be a navy to provoke the Black Street forces and cause chaos in order to delay the naval forces in Rogtown. However, he never expected that there would be such a big commotion. The blackness almost filled the entire street, and the number of people was several times that of naval soldiers. The effect of this provocation is too good. Smoke dodged the booger with a black face, and yelled at Bartolomeo who stood in front of him. Dashichi. What are you talking about? Don't dare to admit it. Bartolomeo pointed at Smoker, Is there someone named Dashichi under your command? Why are you asking this? Smoker slowed down. He sensed something was wrong. Didn't Dashiki sneak out? How could he suddenly be involved with the other party? TCH, it really was the Navy. Bartolomeo said, boys, come with me to beat up these Navy. Immediately, the gangsters divided into 2 teams in 3s and 5s. One team rushed towards the Navy with a large number of prison bullets in their hands, and the other team rushed towards Smoker. Anonymous young general, I don't have time to waste on you. Seeing that Bucky's figure was about to disappear in the chaos of fighting, Smoker snorted coldly, white smoke. His 2 arms instantly turned into dozens of bundles of white smoke, enveloping the gangsters rushing towards him. Hundreds of gangsters didn't know what happened. Their whole bodies were tied up by the white smoke that hit like vines, suspended in the air. They couldn't help screaming in horror. How is this going? What the hell is he? It's actually the legendary devil fruit ability user. Bartolomeo rolled to the ground, nimbly dodged a cloud of smoke rushing towards him, and carefully looked at Smoker in front of him. As the largest underground force in Rog Town, the gateway to the East China Sea, there would be quite a few people every day. The information came to the door, and he heard a lot. He also knew about the devil fruit, but he never paid attention to it. Now that he saw it with his own eyes, he couldn't help but feel extremely miraculous. But that's all. It won't make him shrink back. Otherwise he won't be the boss of the underworld who leads thousands of people. He drew out the dagger at his waist and rushed toward Smoker quickly. Seeing this, several Navy soldiers chasing up behind Smoker quickly drew out their weapons and stood in front of Smoker. Bartolomeo's movements were fast. He used to fight in the way of street gangsters, and he spoke quickly and ruthlessly. With a dagger in his hand, he made a feint move to seduce the soldier standing at the front. After raising the knife, he kicked the soldier's vulnerable rib with his right foot, and then took advantage of the soldier's fallen body to block the soldier's view. Quickly dodged from the side, twisting the neck of the soldier next to him at 45 degrees. The rest of the soldiers were dealt with by Bartolomeo in the blink of an eye. Although these soldiers had practiced hard in the base on weekdays, they were much better than ordinary soldiers in the East China Sea, but for the Blackstreet boss, not a level at all. Holding the knife in his right hand, Bartolomeo slashed at Smoker's chest. Transvestism, what a crime. Because he was hit by Halushi before, Smoker was still a little cautious, fearing that the ordinary weapon in the opponent's hand would be tricky. At this time, his body quickly turned into countless white smoke, and he circled to Bartolo in an instant. Behind Mio, he pressed his right hand on Bartolomeo's head, pressed down hard, and brought the opponent's forehead to hit the ground hard. The stone slab was hit by this blow, and the whole piece was inevitably cracked. Bartolomeo's entire head was embedded in the soft soil under the slate, and he remained motionless. Waste a lot of my time and let that bastard get away. Smoker took 2 puffs of his cigar, frowned and watched the chaotic battle between the gangsters and the Navy in front of him. Colonel, your Bilonga motorcycle has been brought over. The accompanying non-commissioned officer who arrived late stood beside Smoker, looked at the pink lace bathrobe he was wearing, and hurriedly covered his mouth. Laugh. Hey, what are you laughing at? Smoker's eyes instantly became sharp. No. The accompanying sergeant immediately straightened his back. Colonel Smoker, a suspicious ship was found on the south coast of Rogue Town, which is suspected to be the Bickadup of the Bucky pirates. Please issue an order. Send a team of soldiers to sink that pirate ship, and today I will definitely catch those pirates who made trouble. Smoker pulled up the somewhat obstructive bathrobe, exposing his fluffy thighs, and got on the motorcycle. That guy with the white mask must have something to do with the Bucky pirates. Since it's here, then don't think about running away so easily. After all, he started the motorcycle and took a shortcut to chase after him. Looking at the back of Smoker, who was serious on weekdays, like a prostitute, the accompanying non-commissioned officer couldn't help laughing, and finally stopped, coughed twice, dialed the phone bug, and conveyed the order of the colonel, so that the rest of the naval base, the soldiers on standby, went into action. As soon as he hung up the phone, a short knife was pressed against his neck, and the sharp edge almost pierced his skin. Where did Smoker go? Some angry voices came. I won't say it. The accompanying sergeant stammered. Bartolomeo let out a ferocious laugh, and the short knife in his hand moved closer. I don't care if you are a Navy or not. If you don't say anything, go to hell. The accompanying sergeant was sweating profusely, and when his life was threatened, he finally said tremblingly, towards the central square and the south bank. That's good. Haha. Bartolomeo patted the dust and dirt on his face, laughed twice, and chased in the direction Smoker left. As long as you pass through the central square extending in all directions in Rogtown, the road is straight and you can quickly reach the south bank. At this time, it is also Bucky's nearest escape route. Taking advantage of this wave of chaos, he has already thrown Smoker away. At least, he can't see him. Silhouette. The town is huge, and it is impossible for him to run at full speed all the time. If he consumes too much energy, he will appear very passive in the event of an emergency. He has successfully reached the central square in front of him, and it will take about half an hour to leave Rogtown. There is wind in his ears, Bucky ducks to the side, and a white smoke sprints past his original position. Immediately afterwards, the motorcycle accelerated and drifted, blocking Bucky's way. Smoker jumped out of the car, stared at Bucky who had to stop, and frowned. "Where are my clothes? This is cheating." Bucky looked at the motorcycle and muttered, then his eyes fell on the pink lace bathrobe on the other party, and he said playfully, "Sorry, I accidentally threw that away, but I didn't expect the taste of White Hunter to be very special." Smoker grimaced, "You bastard threw away my clothes. Bucky the clown?" Bucky was wearing a mask and cloak. Of course the other party couldn't tell, and he didn't intend to reveal himself, so he said casually, "Of course not, I'm the overlord of the East China Sea, Admiral Creek. It doesn't matter who you are." Thinking of not only having his clothes stolen, but also being thrown away by the other party, Smoker was furious. "I must arrest you today." As he said that, his lower body turned into thick white smoke, and he accelerated to sprint over. It's too naive. Bucky pulled out the 10 hands behind his back, raised his hand and struck forward. Smoker had anticipated Bucky's movements a long time ago. When he approached Bucky, his body instantly split into 2 halves, the smoke dispersed, circled around Bucky's back, and threw a punch. Unfortunately, he still underestimated Bucky's reaction. Bucky stepped forward, using his forward force to leave Smoker's striking range, and then separated from his body with his right hand holding 10 hands, and stabbed Smoker behind him impartially like a crosshair. Grid's fist. The distance between the two sides was too close, and Smoker couldn't dodge in time. The fist was hit back to its original form, and it suddenly became limp, and the smoke on his arm turned back to reality. Bucky turned around and raised his foot backwards. A white slashing airflow knocked Smoker away, and smashed on the side of the execution platform, and the steel plate pillar of the execution platform was dented immediately. Smog was sent from the Great Root, and he is also a natural type devil fruit capable user. His name is indeed scary, but because his own smoking fruit is not strong enough to attack, and he is not armed with arrogance, he can deal with snatching. Bucky, who had 10 hands, seemed to have more energy than energy. Fortunately, it was smoke that had no lethality. If it was fire, ice, or magma, Bucky would not easily rob it of its edge. Smoker stood up clutching his aching chest, and finally put away his underestimation, because he was placed in the East China Sea for a long time, fighting against a few self-righteous little pirates, which made him habitually rely on the ability of the fruit. Professor Fa's domineering attitude was not taken to heart either. In the past few years, not only has there been no improvement, but physical skills have become much sparser. Now that the weapon inlaid with the Sea Tower Stone has been taken away, he has a deeper understanding of his own shortcomings. However, he had the strength to never admit defeat. Seeing that Bucky was about to escape again, his body immediately turned into white smoke and chased after him. "Don't even think about running away under my nose." Bucky's footsteps stopped, and his body turned into the size of fine sand grains at the moment Smoker approached, sticking to his hands, and scattered around. After the latter passed through his body, he closed his body in the air, and his hands quickly arrived at Smoker's elemental nape, and pressed it to the ground. "You are really a tormenting little fairy." Smoker opened his dead fish eyes and did not speak. He clenched his fists tightly. He would be crushed by a mere Eastern Sea pirate. This has never happened before. Since the opponent is the Navy, Bucky, who is a pirate, has no problem killing him, but the background of the opponent is more complicated. Not just the pirates who form a team of their own. The key is to be with Aokiji. Zephyr has a lot of friendship. If these two guys get into trouble, it will be bad. No, Colonel Smoker. A group of Navy soldiers chased after him from the side. The captain of the soldiers saw that Smoker was suppressed by the pirates, so he hurriedly ordered and fired prison bombs. Boom. Several prison bullets were fired in this direction from the gun barrel, and the large net was opened and it came down. Just right. Seeing that the iron net made of sea stones was about to fall, Bucky used the razor to escape in an instant, and Smoker, who was pressed to the ground, was covered inside and couldn't move. "Don't give it away." Bucky waved his hand and quickly disappeared into the alley. Seeing that Bucky was running away, the soldiers detained the officer instead, and they couldn't help being flustered, with sweat pouring out of their faces. What are you still doing in a daze? Hurry up and untie the net on my body. Smoker looked at the soldiers who were in a daze, and shouted. Yes, yes, yes. The soldier moved quickly and untied the net from Smoker's body in a few strokes. The latter sat on the ground and looked gloomy at the direction Buggy was fleeing. I will definitely catch him. You, masked bastard. Smoker was about to stand up and give the order to hunt down, when suddenly a very embarrassed non-commissioned officer ran up from a distance, and shouted from a distance with tears streaming down his face, Colonel Smoker, I finally see you as you. Smoker looked sideways at that person, and frowned. You. Aren't you the one behind Dashiki? Where is Dashiki? Sergeant Dashichi was captured, and I managed to escape from the pirates, the sergeant said with a sob. She was taken away by a sea restaurant called Balati. That restaurant is the base camp of the Buggy pirates. It is a place for selling stolen goods and laundering money. There are also a group of brutal chefs who like to cook with human flesh. If we are not happy if you go to rescue Sergeant Dashichi, I'm afraid her life will be in danger, Colonel Smoker. At this very moment, Smoker hammered the ground hard, fiddling with his words for a long time. Although he guessed that all the things were done by the masked man or Buggy, he didn't dare to take it. Dasaki's life was a joke, and immediately ordered, prepare the warship, and after dealing with the chaos in the town, follow me to the sea restaurant Balati. The house on the north side of the central square is next to the wall. Bartolomeo took a photo and Kabaji's reward list from the younger brother who caught up with him. This photo happened to be Kabaji's appearance when he took off his women's clothes. This person is a cadre of the Buggy pirates. He compared it and said angrily, damn it, you dare to lie to me, making me think that the Navy hurt my little brothers, these bastard pirates, I will not let them go.